Greetings from the Alexandrina Council. Let's meet the driving force behind the Alexandrina community. Mayor Keith Parks. Deputy Mayor Councillor Peter Oliver. West Ward. Councillor Bill Coomans. Councillor Lou Nicholson. Councillor Michael Scott. North Ward. Councillor Craig Maidment. Councillor Sue Miller. Councillor Christy Thornton. South Ward. Councillor Margaret Gardner. Councillor Millie Livingston. And finally, Councillor Peter Oliver.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our council meeting of the 16th of December 2024. An audio recording of this meeting will be made for taking purposes and will last the length of the open meeting. The audio file will be available on the council website after the draft minutes have been circulated. I'd like to welcome our elected members. We have no apologies or leave of absence. I'd also like to welcome our Acting Chief Executive, Tash Hunt, General Manager Community, Stacey Batson, General Manager Infrastructure, Alan Harvey, Acting General Manager Corporate, Gus Rankin, and some of our other staff who are here as required. Would you all please stand for the acknowledgement of country and the local government prayer. The Alexandrina Council and its communities acknowledge the Ngarrindjeri, the Parameterised and the Gardner people as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters of our council district. Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to grant Thy blessing upon the works of this council. Guide us in our deliberations for the advancement and the true welfare of the people of this district. Thank you very much. To remind members, if you have an interest in a matter which is before council at this meeting, you're asked to disclose the interest of the council and provide full and accurate details of the relevant interest at the beginning of the meeting. Members are reminded they must also declare their interest and provide details at the time the relevant item arises for consideration. Councillor Miller has advised that she has a material conflict of interest at item 8.3, recommendation regarding the Resilient Hills and Coast Regional Climate Action Plan and the Regional Sector Agreement 2025-30 due to her employment, and she will leave the chamber when that item is considered. The first item is the minutes of our council meeting held on the 18th of November 2024, and this recommendation that they be received as true and correct. Move for Councillor Nicholson. Seconder, Councillor Maidment. Any discussion relating to those minutes? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Item 2 is adjourned debate. There is no adjourned debate. Item 3 is presentations and deputations. 3.1 is a deputation regarding COVID-19 vaccine concerns by Mr. Royden Rogers. Mr. Rogers has already requested 10 minutes for his presentation. Are we happy to grant him that? In favour of that? Yes? That's okay. So, Royden, are you ready to go? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Royden Rogers, and I would also like to introduce my co-presenter, Dr. Vicky McLaughlin. Our focus this evening is to raise awareness concerning recent research revealing DNA contamination in Moderna and Pfizer mRNA COVID-19 injectable therapies, more commonly referred to as COVID-19 vaccines. Please note this is not a pro versus vax message. As we all know, these COVID shots have been administered to millions of Australians since mid-2021, including no doubt many of the 30,000 residents in our Alexandrina community and our families and friends. This DNA issue was originally brought to the public's attention by members of the Port Hedland Council in Western Australia following a special meeting on October 11 this year. It followed the release of scientific studies by Canadian scientist Dr. David Speaker revealing the presence of excessive levels of DNA contamination, up to 145 times permissible levels, in vials of vaccines supplied from Germany, the US, France and Australia for testing. The validity of those studies was subsequently verified and supported by more than 50 eminent scientific, medical and legal minds from around the world. This data, along with letters of concern, were sent to Prime Minister Albanese and Health Minister Hunt by Victorian Federal MP Russell Broadbent. So what is this issue with DNA contamination? Time does not permit here and now for a deep dive into the science surrounding this issue, but elected members here present have been supplied with extensive relevant scientific details in the weeks preceding this meeting. I would simply like to speak to the implications of this science extract in front of us, which summarises the core of this issue. The DNA components in the cells of each of our bodies are absolutely unique to each of us. In essence, they are the unique biological template of each of us. Your DNA was inherited half from your biological father and half from your biological mother, and so on, and so on, and so on, as far back in your ancestry as you can imagine. Until the 21st century, your body's natural defences were well equipped to counter potential interference with your DNA. However, with the advent of the liquid nanoparticle technology incorporated into the COVID-19 shots, which effectively wraps up the mRNA elements, as well as any foreign DNA fragments present, this whole package is able to be delivered into the billions of cells in your body, potentially disrupting your unique DNA with unpredictable health consequences, such as cancers and immunity disruption, as well as potential flow-on disruptions to descendants. This is a somewhat hidden, but indeed a very serious matter. Sadly, to date, the responses from state and federal government, the Health Minister and the TGA have been evasive, obfuscatory and unsatisfactory. For this reason, the Port Hedland Council took the unusual step of moving motions to advocate on behalf of their community to insist on thorough independent investigations into the DNA safety issues of the COVID-19 vaccines. Further, they felt compelled to seek assistance from all other municipal councils around Australia, including Alexandrina, to support this initiative. There is now a growing number of councils supporting this initiative. I'll hand over to Dr. Vicky McLaughlin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this lovely opportunity to speak to you. I'm actually a GP in Mount Compass, so I'm well within your area of Alexandrina Council. Like everyone, I was involved in administering these awful jabs to people way back at the beginning. I myself rolled my sleeve up and took 2 doses of Pfizer. And the reason I did was because I wanted to continue to provide service and care to my cohort of patients that I really enjoy looking after. I followed the science and had a safe and effective vaccine. The first rule of medicine is first do no harm. That's the core of medicine. We're not looking after people like we should be. With these COVID things, we are doing harm. It's become more and more obvious. This is actually tearing me up inside because I went into medicine to be a doctor, to help people, not to make them more sick. Basically, the doctor-patient relationship has been significantly damaged, and I've noticed that a lot more people have a lot less trust in us doctors. And that's tearing us all apart. At the beginning of COVID, I did extensive research, but more importantly, I observed, I opened my eyes to see what was happening to people. In medicine, you're taught, look around, see what's happening, keep an open mind. A lot of the times what we were told wasn't making sense. Fear the unvaccinated. At medical school, I was taught, you're vaccinated, you're wearing a coat of armour, you're safe, you're fine. That wasn't making sense. I used to be a general surgeon as well. I remember one colleague one day saying to me, Vicky, do you know why we wear masks in theatre? I went, I don't. He says, to make everyone else feel better. Masks don't work after 5 minutes. The other thing was there was no flu cases. Everyone had COVID. There was no flu numbers at all. This just didn't make sense to me. So, unfortunately, this recent research that's now come out about the DNA contamination makes me very afraid about what does this mean for us. A lot of people, this will be the final straw, and I hope a lot more people wake up. The government need to do something. We elect them to serve us. That's what we want them to do, is to listen to us, to see what we can do. I think at this moment in time we're on the precipice of a health catastrophe, and we need to know more about these vaccines. Informed consent, that was obliterated. Informed consent means telling the patient the reason for the treatment, how effective the treatment is, what the potential risks are, and likely course of action if you deny the treatment. My observations sitting in my lovely little office in Mount Compass, I saw a lot of things that made me very uncomfortable. A lot of more autoimmune disease, things like celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease, that means Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, a lot of patients developing autoimmune arthritis, cardiac issues. I was seeing 5 discharge summaries from the local ED departments for young people presenting to the emergency department with chest pain, shortness of breath and palpitations, 5 a week. And these are young people. The other things I was also seeing was autonomic dysfunction, where your nervous system wasn't working correctly, menstrual disorders in people. But more worryingly, people are much more sicker in general now. There's a lot more people coming in with non-specific viral illnesses where they're ill for longer, they are taking longer to get over it, and their immune system isn't functioning the way it used to. I'd like to say thank you again for allowing me to give you this opportunity to give you my experience of what I've seen. But again, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But please utilise that time to speak to your relatives and friends and ask them what their journey has been of their health over the last 3 to 4 years, because I think you will be surprised. Thank you very much.
Could I have that visual, please? These displays sorry, I've skipped a bit here. These displays have been created by a movement called the Forest of the Fallen, and they've been conducted across Australia. And they are a vigil and a mark of respect to those who have died and been injured following COVID vaccine shots. The adverse health consequences I have previously alluded to a few minutes ago, and those outlined by Dr. McLaughlin, are real, as are Australian excess death reports, but unfortunately they have not been publicly recognised, quantified or investigated. We have choices. We can all continue to ignore members of our families and this community silently suffering or dying, or we can acknowledge them and show unusual compassion and courage in pursuing answers and solutions. Which will it be? That's the end of my address. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vicky, any questions or comments? Councillor Scott.
Yes, I'm quite aware of what you've been talking about, but my concern is it's a bit like the horse has bolted. I was talking to someone the other day and he'd had 5 shots. The virus is losing momentum, and even though it's bubbling on, but it's not as impactful as it was. And I'm just wondering what my question is, really, is what do you see us being able to do? Because a whole lot of people have been vaccinated,
yeah.
And you can't turn back time. So
I totally agree with you. That is why there should have been more research done at the beginning. But the difficulty, my darlings, as I've said, we are now in the precipice of a health catastrophe because we don't know what's in these vaccines, and it's now getting to the point. Our health system is crumbling at the moment. But what we need to do is research these vaccines to see what's going to happen 5, 10, 15 years down the line. I'm concerned about the future of children, their fertility. You know, there is so much more to this. And that's why we need this.
A really simple answer I would give you is if we just keep ignoring this and sweeping it under the carpet, nothing will happen. People will continue to suffer and die. If there's a major investigation and they identify 5 key things, for example, there's probably alternative therapies, protocols that can help these people. But until we acknowledge and quantify that problem, there'll be nothing. There'll be no one will get assistance. It has to be brought before the federal government and the major institutions to get to the bottom of this in an absolutely objective way to quantify what the problem is. Then we can deal with it.
So my question is, again, what do you see us doing?
Sorry, okay, what do I see council doing? I understand that most of this is not within the scope of council's core business. I believe advocacy is the most important, the most fruitful, the easiest, the simplest thing council can do. And what I mean by that is to join other councils. You guys represent 30,000 people. If I ring a politician or try and get an audience with someone, I'm one person and it will never see the light of day. If you guys move a positive motion to the Prime Minister or to the TGA or whoever, you are representing 30,000 people here and they have a voice in terms of their wellbeing future.
Any further questions, Councillor Crimmins?
You've mentioned the Federal Health Minister or his department. Have you made approaches to the State Minister for Health, Chris Picton, any of his staff?
I would say the same thing, Bill. I'm one voice, or whoever brings up is one voice. If a third of the councils in Australia bring this up, they are representing 7 million odd people. And imagine the power that has in terms. We're asking a question. We're not trying to put blame on anyone. We're saying we need to get to the bottom of this and stop sweeping it under the carpet. So for me to try and talk to the State Minister or whatever would be futile. And all I'm suggesting you guys do is have the preparedness to give some thought to advocating on behalf of your community. You know, do you care for your community enough to ask the question, ask those hard questions of the TGA or the federal government? Are we going to get to the bottom of this? Are we going to come up with a satisfactory answer?
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I hear you saying that we need to, you believe that we need to advocate on behalf of our communities, and join a few other councils. We had a newspaper in our elected members' room that says it was a world first. So I think, we're all aware that it's not the usual business of council.
Yeah, I do understand that.
So in terms of, if Alexandrina were to follow suit and do something similar, we've had a lot of facts and figures. I appreciate not all of us have a scientific background or ability to sort of wade through all of that. So what exactly do you feel that is it the Federal Health Minister or the TGA needs to do? What exactly do you feel that, this council on behalf of our community needs to ask for?
Well, a thorough and independent investigation, because that hasn't happened to date. We had a fluffy investigation just recently, and the only thing that really revealed is that people are losing trust in the government. Well, that's not surprising. So what we would be advocating for would be a thorough investigation. And like I said, it's not that this council can make the government do anything, but the power of collaboration and unity with other councils may well do that. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our time on this particular topic. So, Roy and Vicky, thank you very much for your time,
thank you.
information you've given us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So, 3.2 is a deputation regarding the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club. Regarding their interest in Lot 10, Langhorne Creek Road, Strathalbyn, and Michael Galea, who's the project manager on behalf of the club, is here to speak to us. So welcome, Michael. So I have to ask you, do you need more than 5 minutes?
Yes, I would.
10 minutes?
If that's okay.
Yep. Are you happy with 10 minutes? Yep. Councillor Scott, are you happy with 10 minutes? I'm asking everybody, thank you. Go ahead, yeah. Michael, we're all ready to go.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to present tonight. I would also like to inform the council of our club's appreciation for the planning staff who have been working with us now for many years and guiding us on where we should be going. There we go. Have you got that on your screens in front of you there, or do you have to look up there? Okay. The Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club operated at the Mills Road facility for 85 years, raising tens of thousands of dollars for the Strathalbyn community, including funds for a new ambulance and local Rotary projects from our surplus and charity races that we ran. It seems that a small group of people have wrongly smeared our club's reputation, claiming it harms children due to gambling. Most gambling now occurs online, and any at races has minimal impact, plus minors are restricted from the gaming area that we will have and have had. Large fines for us if we allow minors there. Since 2011, oops, I've got to go back one. Right, I can't get to it. Okay, since 2011, Council proposed we sell our Mills Road land and relocate to Lot 10, aiming to free up space for light industrial and commercial activities and allow for more retail uses in the Strathalbyn CBD. We didn't object when Council rezoned our land for the Strathalbyn Township and Environs DPA. We have had numerous meetings with council officers, which led to the conclusion that the Strathalbyn community could benefit with their strategic business and with that, our strategic business plans and master plans have been reviewed. Now, I'm supposed to be able to go up to one of these little things and get more, but it's basically copies of council minutes that basically confirm what I'm saying here. So you have to understand that here we were quite happily on Mills Road, and the council suggested the idea of us moving out to Lot 10. Initially, we really, and this goes back to 2011, when the initial discussion started, we weren't interested because we were quite happy where we were. So anyway, 2021, here we go, here's the copies of the council minutes there. Yeah, so okay, I have to do that, sorry. Right, so anyway, in 2021, we attended the first Lot 10 stakeholder meeting and discussed changes to the consultant's layout. The Model Aircraft Club at that meeting requested more flyover land to their south where our facility was planned. In 2022, we sold our land on Mills Road and submitted an expression of interest to the council for a 15.3 hectare portion of Lot 10. During this period, we acknowledged the council's strategic efforts in coordinating the town planning development, and we remained committed to collaborating effectively through this process with council. So there's more of these things to just give more detail. and copies of council minutes and what they say. Council determined that the infrastructure costs for the site to be very high. And with a new council in place, we had to present and justify our plans. We had lost our home by supporting the council. So anyway, consultant number 3 was engaged by council to report on and provide costings for a new Lot 10 sporting and recreational precinct with option 2A and without option 1A, the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club. At the final steering committee meeting, it was moved by the Model Aircraft Club that the option without the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club be approved. Yeah, and that again is copies of documentation from council. There's option 1A that you've all got on your documents, and 2A with the Harness Racing Club included in that. And obviously the consultants didn't really consult with us too much. We gave them as much documentation as we could of our layout, but that wasn't included at all in there. So that's really our plan there. As you can see, it's a little bit more land. We're moving a little bit further north. One thing that we were very cognizant about was the issue that that the Model Aircraft Club wanted more land, and we're aware of CASA. I've got my own model aircraft and know most of those sorts of things. Yeah, we gave a fair bit of thought of how we can have a facility and have them flying over it as well. Now this is, as you can see, this is sort of like our idea overlaid a bit over 2A, and we can see the flyover areas that are in 1A, and the fact that a couple of those areas really are pretty well low risk. Now one thing that we're looking at is we're going to have an 80 by 30 metre shed, and in that shed is our horse barn. So during the, say, 4 races that we might get every year, there will be a number of horses stored in that barn. But for the rest of the year, it's not going to be used. And you'll see at the top there, Strathalbyn Park, our idea is, and you can see down the brown building closer to Langhorne Creek Road, that's a mural that we're planning to have something like that put along the shed wall that sort of introduces that area to the range of sports that we were hoping to have done there. Creating a recreation park, really we've got a joint use of a conference centre, come club room, come reading room, come commercial kitchen and bar. The 80 by 30 metre multi-purpose sporting shed, we're not in use as a horse barn. All infrastructure will be in place. Within the middle, and I have to go back one, yeah, you can see that. In the middle is an AFL size oval and a cricket pitch, and room for the show society and camp draft as well, within the actual top half of the the track there. And also our thought is room for low-cost RV park and camping area with ablutions. So I'll continue on just with that. What interest have we had to date? Well, we've had a confirmation from HRSA that they will continue to give our club races during the year. So to suggest that we're not going to get any is false. Whoops. What does that mean?
That's 10 minutes, Michael. We've only got 5 minutes left for any questions. So have you got much more to go?
I'll be real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so these are the organisations that we've had want to be part of the facility here. And I've got copies of these that are available to any member that they want to be. We've looked at ways of being an economic driver and employer. We've got a management set up here for the whole thing, which is fair to all clubs and what have you. And really, for the 86 acres, we had a look at it. There's 38 acres at $12,500 per acre is $476,216. The value of General's Department give a discount for land in recreational use. We've pegged it at $70,000. So the actual purchase price of the land could be $142,865. Now the consultant put the value in as $300. So the club is willing to add an additional $157,135 to match that price. The other thing is that the difference between 1A and 2A for the cost of infrastructure is $410,000. We're willing to accept that and pay for that as well. We would have to move in a slight distance of model aircraft club buildings. So really, and also the ongoing costs of running the thing would be by us. The other thought was that the consultant allowed $1,017,000 for a camping area and $1.5 million for an RV park. We will accept all of that as well on the site. So really, the cost to council will be nothing. I've got a summary there that summarises pretty well everything I've been talking about, but I've also got 3 recommendations, and then that's me done, Keith. Recommendations that we respectfully encourage council to consider option 2A as a more favourable choice. That during their meeting on the 19th of October 2020, that they look at reaffirming their support for that report, and the council approved the idea of the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club, I'm getting thirsty, plan to construct and manage the RV park and camping ground as outlined in the TSA report. So that's about it. We're ready to go now, by the way.
We've got just a couple of minutes for any questions. Has anybody got Councillor Coomans?
Thanks, Michael. I'm sorry, there was so much information there that's, you know, that there's just not enough to try and comprehend all of that. You did say you had a number of organisations or clubs already signed up. Are they sort of signed up, or are they just providing an expression of interest, or to what extent do they go?
Oh, they've provided different ones, and I'm really thirsty, but that's okay. But we've got memorandum of understandings and expressions of interest that they really do want to get involved. And we've spoken to them recently as well, and they're still very keen, particularly the ones that want to use the shed and indoor cricket as well. So yeah, no, it's pretty good. We're quite excited about it, really.
Okay, and if given the opportunity, would the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club provide a proper submission outlining all of the things that you're willing to do and so forth?
Oh, sure. But also we would have to, if we're allowed to, would have to put in a development application spelling out the users, and that sort of has a bearing on the ablutions as well. But yeah, sure, absolutely. You know, it'll be whatever council requires.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mike. I'm really delighted that you came tonight. I'm not aware that anyone from the Harness Racing Club representing them has ever come and made a deputation in public to the community, so I thank you very much for doing that. I just have a couple of questions. Is it correct, and I believe it is, that there was a memorandum of understanding signed by your president, Max Beasley, way back in, I think it was 2016, that expressly made known that there was no commitment to the Harness Racing Club? I've seen that document, and it was very explicit that there is no commitment to the Harness Racing Club to go on Lot 10.
No commitment by council or no commitment by the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club?
Both parties signed that memorandum of understanding that said doing this body of work does not commit anything to the council, does not commit to the Harness Racing Club that they have first dibs on that land or can go to that land. I'm happy to provide that document to you if you're not aware of it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it. I'm aware of a memorandum of understanding where council is again supporting Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club to be at that site.
That sort of finishes the questions. We've run out of time. I'm sorry, that's our regulation. Just that document, Mike, there was an understanding, but that was purely indicating that the Strathalbyn Racing, there was no commitment from the council at that stage to get into bed and do a deal with anybody. We took on board what the Harness Racing Club presented and everything else, but we understood it was there, we understood it, but there was no actual commitment. So there wasn't nothing was said that the Harness Racing Club had first option. It was purely that we understood their interest, the interest was there. So I just wanted to clarify that. But that's we've run out of time. I'm sorry, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. So 3.3 is a deputation from the Encounter Coast Surfing Reserve Steering Committee. We have Nisa Shabella, Phil Ball and Robert Simpson on behalf of that group to present to us. You ready to go? Thanks, Nisa.
Thanks.
Do you need more than 5 minutes?
Yes, please.
You do. So anybody happy with 10 minutes? Yep. So that's
it may not take that long. I may be able to riv it up.
Yeah, we've got 15 minutes in total, so we need a little bit of time for questions.
Right,
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We made a deputation to Alexandrina Council early 2018, and we also made a deputation to Victor Harbour Council because this project goes over 2 different council areas. We're coming back to you today. We had it took us nearly 3 years to actually get the submission together to put to the NSR, the National Surfing Reserve Organisation, and we had it accepted in late 2019. COVID happened and a few other things that over the years with our steering committee that put the delay on us, but we're back now. So I've given a PDF file of this whole presentation to all members, so hopefully you've had a look through. That's the proposed area from Parsons Beach through to Goolwa, and we've put it to Beach Road. So with the acceptance by the NSR, it will mean that this surfing reserve will be the biggest one in Australia. And we'll probably be 21 or 22. I'm just going to flip through all this because hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. So this is where we're at now. So we've completed stage 1, which is to put the nomination together and to have it accepted by the National Surfing Reserve Organisation. So we're now at stage 2. And stage 2 criteria is to identify a site and install a local rock with a bronze plaque on it. We've identified the site as Middleton Point. In the early stages in 2006, where the NSR were actually looking at different potential reserve sites, both Middleton and Waipinga were identified as 2 national surfing reserves. So that gave us the task of either having to do 2 reserves or to do one big one to include the whole area. So we went down the path of going for the bigger one. But we still believe that Middleton Point is sort of like the hub. It's where the culture sort of spreads out about. So in a few slides I'll show we've got a few different potential sites for the rock, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail when I get to it. We also have to create a booklet telling the story of the reserve region. These are a couple of examples of some of the other reserves booklets. We kind of favour something like this, which is quite a lovely looking book, nice texture, eco, and we would like that book to potentially be in the visitor information centres, the surf shops, galleries, whatever, around the area in both Victor and Alexandrina councils. So I'm doing that book at the moment with the help of a guy named Bon Engel. Oh, sorry, I go back. Oh, I'm going forward. I should be going back. How do we go back? We can't go back. Okay. No, there's back there. Sorry, go back. And then the third thing was to host a dedication ceremony inviting the NSR representative, who is our buddy, and that's Professor Andrew Short. So we would invite him at the very least to come over from Sydney and to do the official ceremony. Right, let's get back. So we have finally located a suitable bluestone rock. Mind you, I was driving down Ellinsford today, and there's so many of them lined up. They're bigger and better than the one that we've seen. We have a contractor who's a surfer who's prepared to remove it and transport it to the new site once it's approved. And the plaque will be installed on the rock once it's in place. It's quite a simple procedure, just need to drill 4 holes in it with some silicone. The quotes that we've had for the plaque will be around a $2,000 mark. It's a 400mm diameter, and it has to be bronze to fit in with the national criteria. It takes about 6 weeks to turn around. So once we've got that going, we can get an exact quote. And so that's an example of a plaque, what it looks like. That's at Merewether, and here are a few of the other ones. The one in the middle at the bottom is the Mid-Coast Reserve. So that's the Onkaparinga Council Region 1. It's really beautiful how they've done it. They've got pavers that are, actually you can buy a paver. And so council installed it so it can easily, once someone's bought a paver, then you can just swap it out. And that's been a really nice steady income for them. It makes them about $300 a month. So that's been a really good little project for them. Our surfing reserve rock would probably look a little bit like the one that's in the bottom left-hand corner, but you can see there's all different kinds. The one that's Bondi in the top right, that's just on a bit of sandstone. The one at Byron is a beautiful black piece of polish. So they're all different. The one at Margaret Rivers in the footpath. So this is our rock that we have been identified. It's at Ratalang at the moment. Paul Minards has kindly offered it to us. I flipped it on its side, just in the options section. But we actually were looking further around the point at one point, but actually I've come back to, we talked about it a bit more. And option 1, there used to be a rubbish bin there. And it actually, we think it would be the easiest place to put it. And it also, as you're driving around the car park at Middleton Point, it's the first thing you see. So it actually fits the criteria of the NSR better. Option 2 is around the corner a bit, and I'll move up so you can see the little blue circles. I haven't done this very professionally, have I? But the little blue circle at the top is option 1. The blue circle that is around the bottom on the asphalt at the top there is option 2. And there used to be a rubbish bin there as well, which has been removed. And then next to it is on the grass, and then across the road, which was our first option. We've kind of taken that off the board at the moment because there's wooden barriers there, and it's extra money to, I imagine, to pull it out, and we're just trying to save money. So they're the different options that we've identified, and that we're hoping for some consultation with council on to help us lock in where it could go. And, oops, back. Yeah, so you can see that option 2 is where the rubbish bin used to be, and option 3 is just next to it on the grass. So we're sort of hoping that your engineer or whatever can help us with that. And actually I was down the point this morning having a surf, and I noticed in option 1 there's actually a big fat crack running through that bit of cement, so it needs a bit of care anyway. So it could be nice. But thinking about potential paving or any other sort of beautification of it is an option. But at this point we just want to keep it simple, get the plaque on the rock and the rock in place, get the booklet done and have our dedication ceremony, and then any other things that could happen, signage, whatever could happen down the track. All right, from the booklet, I did put a link in the email I sent around to our website, and I've been collating information about surfing in our area for 5 years now, getting ready to put it together. I'm collaborating with a young filmmaker and a very creative gentleman named Bon Engels. We're actually showing one of his films this Friday night at the Victor Cinema. He's very creative. He's going to help us design and put the book together. Printing, we will do a limited print run, probably about 50 to start with for the ceremony. So we're just doing that through fundraising and grants. And we'll approach Victor Council as well for that. They can put some money in there as well, and I've showed you a couple of the samples. We really aim to tell the story in a really engaging way, and hope that it can be sold in, as I said, galleries, surf shops, the VICs, etc. So that's kind of where we're at. And once we get all those things ready, then we can have our ceremony. Now, we've started conversation with Surfing SA about looking at the Southern Surf Festival in April and trying to maybe on the Friday before incorporate the dedication ceremony. Yeah, and I've already spoken to the rest of that as well, with flying at least one of those guests in. And that would be really nice to have them come and see how we do festivals and see what our surfing, competitive surfing is about as well. One of the reasons that we revved back up again, really think that we need to get this done next year, is that in my research, I came across a book in the Victor Library that talks about the summer of 1924-25. The surfers coming down to Petrel Cove and an enterprising Eric Webster with this new craze that was going through South Australia, hiring out wooden surfboards. So we figured that if that's the first recorded that we know of surfing, that would make this summer the centenary of surfing in South Australia as we know it. So we think that's a pretty good thing to celebrate. So we'd like to sort of coincide, and it's given us a bit of extra oomph to get it done over this next 6 months. So yeah, and that's just our aims of all the surfing reserves, to preserve the area, to respect other users, to enjoy it and to share it. Yeah, and I will just jump through the rest of those as well because I've given that all to you. There's some of the other surfing reserves. Another new one that's being worked on at the moment is over at Fishery Bay in Port Lincoln. So they're hoping to dedicate their surfing reserve in 2026, and they're doing some great things over there. They're running a film festival as well for a year. So, you know, surfing films have always been a big part of surf culture. So it's really been great to have the Victor Cinema come on board and do our Frothing Fridays. So we're going to do that for a year. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of press we had, sort of a couple of years old now, but yeah, that's Sunday Mail front page. So anyway, that's our deputation. We just thought we'd like to inform you again where we're at. We've been back to the Middleton Town and Foreshore and gave a deputation to them recently, so we're hoping to work with the Middleton Town and Foreshore at looking at any kind of beautification or any support we can get from them. Yeah, and so we're just hoping that you may be able to help us get the next stage, the engineers, whatever, the right people to help us get this thing done and dusted. And then, yeah, celebrate it next year. Thank you.
I've put a question. I guess you've contemplated the fact the 25th of April is Anzac Day?
No, I haven't.
Right, so it'll be a busy day, certainly in the morning.
So that's the Friday.
The Friday the 25th, Anzac Day.
No, I hadn't even thought of that.
Are there any questions?
Yes, that was just, it could be after, it could be the Monday
Yeah.
or the Sunday afternoon.
Nicholson.
Yeah. Yes, Lou.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to have you back. I remember chatting to you at one of the Middleton Surf Festivals a couple of years ago, and I think this is... Sorry, yes. I'm keen to know exactly what you need from council. Sorry, apologies. I'm keen to know exactly what you would need from council, how council can support you over the coming months to get to the outcome.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's the engineering or whatever, the people that would say, look, this is a suitable place, this is not a suitable place. So we'd like to have a meeting. So if you can direct us to whoever it is that we need to talk to, and just help us go through those sort of nuts and bolts things that need to happen. Any funding would be great. Happy to do grants. I'm certainly going to go for a short grant. That's mainly for the plaque, really, to get the plaque done. But yeah, so primarily it's just helping us out and being there and supporting us and putting us in touch with the right people so that we can tick the boxes of actually installing this rock in the right place, in the right manner. And we sort of like to do things on the cheap a bit. So, you know, we don't want it to cost anybody a lot of money. But yeah, I'm sure that there will be some installation costs that will need to be covered. So just maybe helping us identify what those costs are going to be and how we're going to pay for them and who's going to do what.
Councillor Gardner.
This is very exciting.
It is.
And I'm not a surfer myself, but I can see that for the surfing community how important this is. And it's obvious that lots of work has gone into the production of your book and also getting recognition. If you get your book published by a publisher, it will need to go to SA libraries.
Yes.
And then it's there forever. And it's important that those historical documents, because that's what you're talking about,
Indeed,
actually get recognised. So well done you and your cohorts for getting to this stage. And certainly I would be really encouraging you and support and give my support as a council member to this project. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Thank you very much.
Unfortunately,
No more questions?
And there's no further questions. We're out of time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your
You're
presentation.
welcome. Thank you. Oops, I'll do that.
Can we please keep it to questions, not statements? Thank you, because that wasn't really a question. You know, and we run out of time. We run out of time. Other people make. So 3.4 is a deputation from Zomil and Dennis Patch from the Holiday Club of Strathalbyn. There we are, their facilities at Langhorne Creek. So, welcome.
Your Worship members, I'm Dennis Batchy, Secretary of the club. Better looking one's Errol Zobel, that makes him President. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Before you have to ask before you start, do you need more than 5 minutes?
We're going to try and be succinct. We won't need much more, perhaps.
We'll say 10 and hopefully you can
Okay.
Just so we've got time for questions, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, so we've come along almost impromptu. We haven't had much warning of this happening, so we'll do our best to put our case. The Strathalbyn Model Aircraft Club, we'll call it SMAC, it's common. It's been in existence for about 48 years. It's been on the subject land for about 38 years, since September 96. The club's very grateful to have had the use of that land. It's been pretty much ideal for club purposes. We are, however, concerned with where things could go. The Harness Racing Club proposition, they may think it's fair to all clubs, it's certainly not to ours. It would clearly lead to the demise of our club. There is not enough space on the land for that map that was put up there, for their proposal, the other clubs and us. The proposal really, well, I'll go back a little bit. The council has had a long-term vision for the use of Lot 10, purchased many years ago. The vision for it has been for a recreation hub. We see that the proposal to purchase the land by the Harness Racing Club is a disruptor and undermines that worthy vision that council has had, that council has invested in with the consultancy. And it would lead to a loss of community-based control of the land. In the proposition that was put up there, some other clubs would be subject to the dictates of the Harness Racing Club rather than council. It occurred to us that during the Section 41 committee, the group, the resolution was unanimous for option 1A. Didn't sound like that from the presentation that was made. Be that as it may. The layout not only eliminates us, it squeezes other clubs, other facilities, doesn't allow opportunity for future expansion. To us, it does not seem like a particularly good solution, a proposal. We note that the club was saying, yes, we'll pay for this, we'll pay for that. If they've got that much money, are they able to buy other land rather than disrupt this project? It's an industry-based proposal rather than community. Yes, there might be members of the community, but it belongs to the racing industry and supported by the gambling industry. In light of the disruption that this proposal would cause, we respectfully submit that if council were minded or sympathetic to their cause, that at very least you would need to see a substantive and verifiable business case to ensure that they could indeed meet these proposals that they're putting up, that it would indeed be developed and it would indeed be financially viable over time. The council's invested substantially in the Riley TSA report. It's just comprehensive. It's done a clear analysis. It comes out, it's clear from that option 1A has the greater merit for the community. But this proposal is directly opposite to that recommendation, in my view, our view. The presence of the harness racing facility would seem unlikely to substantially reduce the cost of council for running a recreation hub. The benefits of option 1A are significant from that point of view, that it does not, that Strathalbyn does not lose one of its long-standing community-based clubs, and more importantly, for a wider community perspective, control of the land would remain with council, not private entities with unknown futures, and the ability to provide more desirable outcomes for sport, recreation, community building and the community health and benefit that comes with that. So, in summary, it's our submission that the proposal that you saw up there on the screen is not a good one for the development of this land. It dominates the land and uses most of it for the Harness Racing Club facility. And others would have to go and negotiate with the club to use anything in that land. We can't fly over it, we can't use it. Clearly, with matters of safety, insurance and liability, it's not workable for us. I think in a nutshell, that's our position. I thank you for listening, and we're both happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Germans.
Thanks for your presentation. I know it's not an easy thing to do. And look, I acknowledge that you've been a user of that land for a long, long time.
Yes.
And probably if the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club were to go there, you'd probably be the most disadvantaged. But can you see, if they were to go there, can you see a way of actually accommodating your club as well? I noticed on the diagram it shows some flyover areas that you need, and one of those is over where the club, the Strathalbyn Harness Club would be.
Yes.
Given that they wouldn't be operating every day, so the land probably is vacant most of the time, is there a possibility that you could still use that as a flyover space?
It would be difficult because, and certainly in the proposal shown tonight, it comes even further forward than the TSA Riley report. That would place infrastructure of fences, probably some elevation to the track, possibly light towers and whatever. They would all be obstacles to model aircraft that we couldn't safely fly over. And I mean, with the space that's available to the club now, other than for very small electric aircraft, it's only just big enough. We benefit from the good graces of the neighbour, who allows us to fly over the hill to the east, and we need the land dependent which way the wind's coming from, of course, whether you land from the north or the south, or occasionally crosswinds to the east or the west. But basically, not that we're being difficult, but it just couldn't function.
Do you have any further questions? Anybody? Councillor Thornton.
So if you're struggling with your location as it is now, have you had any thought about moving locations at all?
That's not easy. To find land that you can set up some infrastructure on, even if some kind farmer allows you to use his paddock, it's very hard to put in a runway. We've got a grass run, like an artificial grass runway. At the moment, we've got a club shed, we've got sheltered benches, all that sort of thing that goes, and toilets that goes with the club. Difficult to go onto someone else's land and do that.
Just if I could comment there, we're not actually struggling at the moment. The area that we've got works quite well for us, given the flyover zones that we currently have.
Councillor Miller.
Actually just answered my question. I was wondering if it would be easier to expand where you currently are, given you've been there, rather than actually relocate.
I mean, we have asked that question of ourselves, and currently to the south of our clubhouse there's a fence, and we so often say, oh, if it was only another 20 metres, you know, when some aircraft overruns or you end up with a dead stick, no engine, you're coming in and you've got to have space to get the aircraft down. Bearing in mind, some of these are 2 and 3 metre wingspan and weigh anywhere between 8 and 12 kilograms. So you can't stop them on a dime.
Any further questions? Councillor Maidment.
So, would you be happy to put up a counter proposal, given what we've heard tonight from the Harness Racing Club? Because, I mean, I know where the specific area is. A lot of elected members don't know exactly what the footprint of what you currently have, what your lease area is.
Yes.
So, and the second question is, you talk about flying into infrastructure. How many accidents have actually happened there? And you've got that area over the mine. Are you allowed to fly over that as well, the dam? Because there's a vast area there toward the east. It's not being used.
In answer to that, model aircraft do go down from time to time. We try and not break our toys. But it does happen. And with respect to the dam wall, we try and fly short of that and not fly over it. There are times when there's turbulence there, because it's quite a near vertical face, and that's not good. And then we can't risk losing planes into the dam, because that's toxic in any water, and that when there's water it's toxic. So that's a no-no. I mean, yeah, look, we'd be more than happy to negotiate if there's space we can actually use, but it just seems that it might not be enough.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Cummins, you want another one?
I was just wondering, you've got an east-west runway, which is that also impacted by the Harness Racing Club proposal? I know your north-south one is, because actually it would be on where they would be operating.
Yes.
But next door to that is vacant land. If that became available, is that an option for you to put the north-south runway?
East-west is far from ideal, because our prevailing winds are generally from southeast round to southwest prevailing. Occasionally you get westerlies, and sometimes morning easterlies. The difficulty with, the plan in the TSA Riley report, option 1A, leaves an east-west runway unchanged. The issue with that, if that were the primary runway, one would be winds and frequently landing crosswind, which is not an aeronautical wise thing to do. Then the issue, particularly when the sun's lower in the sky, if you fly from the southern side, you're continually looking into the sun. Again, not a safety ideal, not for your planes. If we were to move our shed and everything to the north, then we'd be using up some of that space that's available for the runway. We have thought about it, but it's not ideal by any means, probably not workable. And when I say that this could lead to the demise of the club, people who fly the larger aeroplanes would quickly leave this club, and it wouldn't survive.
Any further questions, Councillor Thornton?
On that, where's the next closest club?
The next closest club is South Coast, which has got an airfield at Finnis towards Clayton Bay.
We've only got 17 seconds left, so it's sort of 14. We're going. So we're pretty well run out of time. Dennis and Errol, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Now, item 4 is petitions. There are none. Item 5 is questions with notice. 5.1 is a question from Councillor Oliver regarding the Portico, Middleton and Milang Master Plan. 5.2 is from Councillor Maidment regarding the quarterly project report. 5.3 is from Councillor Miller regarding the Open Space Fund. 5.4 is from Councillor Miller regarding the Car Park Fund and Recreational RV Park Scoping Study. And those questions and the answers to the questions are in the agenda. Item 6 is questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Worship. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of members of the community mention to me an observation that we've advertised a number of positions through our social media channels, and of course, you know, we need to get the word out when we're looking for people. But the question has been put to me, when we are looking for savings, is there an explanation that can be offered to the Chamber and the community around new positions being created, particularly when I suppose we have an enterprise bargaining agreement that permits reducing the numbers of staff that we can have. So just an explanation for those new positions. Thank you.
Sure, through the mayor I can answer that.
So when positions become available, either they're vacated or otherwise, we do discuss them internally and whether they need to be filled or we can create any efficiencies by not renewing them. Quite a few of the positions that have been advertised more recently are to meet legislative requirements or compliance. A lot are in planning, building, that kind of thing. There have been, I think there's only been one newly created position, which I believe, and Stacey, correct me if I'm incorrect here, is using an existing FTE, but through a part of a restructure. So they have not renewed another role, and so it's not an additional budget, I believe. So they are existing positions.
Councillor Scott.
Yes, Your Worship, my question is once again in relation to weeds proliferating the district. I asked before about onion weed and the role of the NRM board. I'm now asking about African daisy. Our district is being invaded by African daisy. It has a great capacity to spread because it has like a bird seed type seed head, and it spreads rapidly after fire as well. So if you burn an area, it'll go. And I want to know what is being done. There seems to be failure with the onion weed. Is anyone doing anything about the African daisy, or can the council ask the NRM board to do something about the African daisy as it's spreading out of the hills? Please.
I'll go through to the General Manager Infrastructure to answer this question.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, we have a weed spraying program which concentrates on public assets, so roadsides, open space. Anything that sits outside of public, open or the public realm is private and is therefore under the management or the care and control of the owner of that property. So there is a conversation, or there is a responsibility on the landowner, if we're talking about private property, to make contact with those people that can provide assistance and support. If the issue is around public land, then if you can provide me with specific details of where this issue is occurring, then I can come back to you and give you more detailed advice on it.
If I may, then they're scattered. And what I'm asking is it possible for our staff, when they are driving round, as they do in a course of duty, in a utility, if they pick the odd one, you'll see it, it's as clear as day, bright yellow, there'll be a bush here, there'll be a bush a kilometre up the road, perhaps not for 3 or 4 kilometres. If the staff were just to grab those, put them in the back, put them in the bin when they get home to the depot, a lot of the problem would be solved. And I'm talking about public land, because once it's on private land, well, the NRM board should be doing something, whether it's on private land or public land. But I just wonder whether the staff could pick up the ones around, because I'm about to start doing it myself.
So just clarify one thing, there isn't an NRM board anymore. It's the Hills and Fluria Landscape Board, and they do have a program on certain weeds. So if you communicate to Alan what the problems are and where they are, we can either handle it if it's on our program, or we can communicate with the Landscape Board for them to look at it, because that's part of what we pay them the levy for. So Oliver.
Thank you. I was hoping that we could receive an update in regard to the provision of disabled access at Goolwa Beach this summer, please.
Go to the General Manager Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, so the access point that's currently provided at Goolwa Beach, there are 2 of them. One of them is a ramp that runs down to the beach. That has moving sand that sits at the end of the beach, and from time to time it gets eroded out and there is a drop-off of some description toward the end, and then at times that sand comes back in. We are aware of that drop-off at the end, and we'll do what we can to assist at those times. We are limited by what we can do on the beach because we shouldn't be moving sand around without a permit. So there's limitations to what we can achieve, but we'll also have looked at and we'll continue to look at options to better that situation. But we'll have to bring that back to you in due course, given that will have a cost implication to it.
Any further, Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Worship. Just quickly, my question is around this council's corporate memory and record keeping pre-merger. Would the agenda and associated item and minutes reflect or affirm that on or sometime in 1997, when the land that's referred to as Lot 10 was purchased, that it was actually purchased with the intent for a basketball stadium and a second oval? I'm happy for this question to be taken on notice.
Through the Mayor, I will take that on notice.
Any further questions? No, so we'll move on to item 7, which is notice of motion. 7.1 is a motion from Councillor Scott regarding affordable housing. It's a confidential item, so seek the leave of the chamber to move that to the confidential section of the agenda starting at page 494. Are you all in favour of that? Okay, so that's it. So we'll leave that until we get to it to save us telling everybody to go home and come back. 7.2 is one from Councillor Miller regarding the revocation of and the naming of a section of Bester Drive, Highmarsh Island. It's moved by Councillor Miller. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, Your Worship. It's all printed in the agenda, so I won't read through it, and I note the officer's comments, but we did have a deputation by a gentleman regarding this, and that's why I've brought this forward. But I guess my question is, if someone makes a deputation on a matter such as this, is there a process post their deputation that follows up, or has there been any contact with this gentleman? Because I'm happy to move this and leave it to the chamber, but I'm interested to know, there's been 4 deputations tonight, and what happens next?
Go to the General Manager Community.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the Group Manager Regional Development to answer.
Thank you, through the Mayor. We have received correspondence from the person that made the deputation at the last council meeting in relation to this road name change. However, without a motion such as what's proposed here, we are still running on a previous motion that says that the road name should be changed to Express Court, and that was endorsed by council. So it would require a further act from council for us to go a different way.
You okay with that? Is there a seconder? Councillor Oliver? Any discussion? Councillor Gardner?
Well, I think Wynwood is a really, actually a better name than Express. We've got a process, and the process is we request the Heritage Advisory Committee. I think it is better if we stick to that process. I have no problems with the changing of the name at all, but I think it's actually better if we do it the correct way.
The mover could add to the end of that, could be subject to endorsement by the advisory committee.
Thank you, Worship. I'm very happy to take advice from administration on this. I was just concerned that we would have this deputation that was very well presented, and I'm all for process. So whatever the process is that is needed to be followed to take this or respond to this request before too much happens, then I'm very happy to amend the wording of this to reflect whatever needs to progress this in the most appropriate and considered way. Sorry, I'm not looking for approval from the Heritage Advisory Committee. I'm looking for advice and procedural advice of an appropriate procedure. And I know that the Heritage Advisory Committee makes recommendations about road names, but ultimately council determines that.
Through the Mayor, sorry, a misunderstanding. It's council who decides on road names, so council can completely, within their right, resolve to change the name to this.
I'm happy to take advice from the Heritage Advisory Committee if that's how we come up with road names, definitely.
So council's policy does say that we would generally seek names that have been approved by the committee. If you could just confirm what way you'd like to go, if you want to leave it as you had it, or if you want to include subject to approval.
I would like to, I don't want to go against policy and procedure. What I'm trying to capture here is the intent of the deputation when we're very early on in the naming of this road, and there's, I think there's maybe one house started. I just don't want or how do we stop the process and deal with that, seek advice from the Heritage Advisory Committee and then follow the correct process to come up with names to name this, or is there an urgency around it, I guess? I'm open to the wording.
My advice would be if we were going to seek their approval, we would seek their approval and then bring a report back to council to endorse the name would be our normal process. But am I right, Matt?
Do you need then a motion to pause the process, a wording that pauses the process to allow for that to happen?
It's up to the mover of the motion how they want to progress. So if your intent is that you would like to consult the committee first, you could put at point 3, we could, if you want me to put something up, I can about it going to the committee first.
I just want to apologise to my colleagues because I submitted this motion virtually the day after the last council meeting, so I apologise that this is happening on the fly. So I'm very open. Look, if we can just pause the process and get advice from the Heritage Advisory Committee and a recommendation, then that's whatever the wording needs to be to achieve that. Thank you.
So would you like, so if we stick with point 2 to revoke the decision on the other name, and then we seek approval from the Heritage Advisory Committee for the proposed road name, Winwood Court, with a report to come back to council.
Seek advice and a recommendation from the Heritage Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm also happy to be guided by the seconder of this motion because it impacts his.
It seems to me that this is a pretty simple thing and the process has been followed, but it didn't produce a positive outcome that everyone wanted. I'm quite happy to approve this up as is to change the name. It's not going to happen every day.
You've got a motion. It's not whether for you to otherwise it's up to you whether you're going to second it or not. We've got a Heritage Advisory Committee, and that's their job. So it's a slap. It's not fair to them. So we get them to give a list of names all the time and recommendations, and then we go and change our mind without talking to them. So to be fair and not to insult them, I think we should go through the right process. Let them know what would like to do, and just get their approval to do it. That's just being respectful to that panel.
So we do have a moved motion, and we're just sort of seeking the seconder's approval to vary it.
Yep.
Yep.
So now, with there any discussion?
Can I just confirm the motion that we're doing? So we're saying subject to seeking advice from the Heritage Advisory Committee that you endorse the road name, or would you like to come back to you first?
I think unless the advice is to the contrary, we get their advice, and then if their advice is that they are happy with, it goes ahead. But I do think it needs to come back to council to follow the correct process, and that's what would happen if it had gone through the Heritage Advisory Committee. But I'm open to advice. I submitted it the day after the council meeting, so.
So if you're comfortable, if we just remove the word endorse and just to Windward Court, because we're just seeking advice on the road name change. Are you happy with that? Thank you.
There's about five motions. Calm down. We'll get to it when we're ready. We'll get the motion right first. Thank you.
It's okay now. Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. Now, Councillor Maidment.
So we already have a pre-approved list of names for Goolwa. It would be very embarrassing if this was on that list. We're going back to the committee again. And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that someone in administration's plucked that name off, possibly off that list, and assigned it to this particular road. So I don't know, something worth looking into.
Through the Mayor, it's not on the pre-approved name list, so we've checked that. So that's why the officer's comment was we could consider seeking their advice on it.
Councillor Livingston.
2 questions. My first question is just going to Councillor Miller's point in relation to pausing the process. Can I confirm that point 2 does that effectively? Pauses the process in, yes?
You are proposing to revoke the decision of the renaming.
Just confirming that.
Yep.
My second point is, point 3 does not read right, in my opinion. Can you please have a look at that? Because I understand from the mover and the seconder that it was... Thank you.
Councillor Miller, are you happy with that? That's right.
Yes, I am, except I now have another question, which was, how on earth did this name get put forward if we are now having to go back and go to the Heritage Advisory Committee if it wasn't actually on the list of names? I guess it's a process step, but I'm very happy with where that's landed for the purpose of what we're trying to achieve tonight for this name.
Through the Mayor, it was suggested by the resident who did the deputation.
Oliver, are you happy with
the original name?
Councillor Scott.
All I wanted to draw attention to was the fact that there is as Councillor Maidment said, there is a pre-approved list, and I think the process should include the Heritage Advisory Committee considering the names on that list, because they've come up with those over a period of time, and it may be far more appropriate for one of those names than this one that's just been plucked out of the sky.
Through the Chair, so what we're going to seek advice from the Heritage Committee on the road name change to the proposed name. So I'm sure the committee will come back to us to let us know if they don't think it's appropriate, and they could, if they wish to, put forward another suggestion for us to consider.
Councillor Gardner.
Your Worship, the next Heritage Advisory Committee is on the 3rd of February.
Any further discussion? I'll be changing the name of Anzac Highway to something altogether different. It's monumental. Anyway, Councillor Miller, do you wish to write a reply?
Well, I'll just say that I'm trying to respond to a member of the community. I'm trying to follow the right process, and if Express wasn't on the Heritage Advisory Committee pre-approved list, then I think we do have, regardless, I'm very happy with where this is at, and I think it achieves what we're trying to do in the correct way. Thank you, and thank you for indulging me.
In this a discussion, so I'll put the motion to you. All those in favour? Against? Anybody against? That's carried unanimously. 7.3 is a motion from Councillor Miller regarding the Capital Works Program quarterly project reporting. You wish to move it and speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Worship. So I did first submit this motion on the 17th of June, and all of my background is included in the motion. What is concerning me is that we have an asset management problem that has actually been acknowledged by the Chamber, by the Audit and Risk Committee, and by administration, and we are addressing it. And I don't want this to be seen as not having confidence or faith in the administration or ourselves that we are addressing this issue. What I do feel needs to be enhanced is, as an elected member, wading my way through a spreadsheet of projects it's impossible for me to do. I sent through an example to my colleagues of what I think the report it's pretty simple, and I would imagine that everybody would actually know this information anyway. It's reporting it to the public and building confidence and transparency and in our council that we are on top of our asset management. I'm also really nervous about, one of the reasons I nominated for council was because our asset management funding, asset renewal funding ratio was consistently never hitting what we said we would do. And I've mapped it, and over 10 years, only twice did we even come close to delivering what we said we would deliver. We only know that, we get these updates at budget reviews, but it's not in the thorough detail, and we get that project list. That's placing a lot of responsibility and time on us to go through that and analyse it and compare what it was last month to this month. I don't have the time to do that. I will put my hand up and say I don't, because I'm reading thousands of other pages in an agenda. This is fundamental council core business, managing these assets and having a grip and an understanding of what assets we're renewing and what is new. And often when we get our financial statements, what was initially renewal has now become new or capital. So I'm having a lot of trouble following it. And, if we also, and I'm not covering gifted assets in here, but I'd love to include an extra bit that talks about gifted assets, because we knew that we were having $2 million worth of assets coming online last year, but they haven't actually been accounted for. So I'm trying to, in a gentle way, I guess, show support for the administration and all the effort and time and commitment and resourcing that we're putting towards asset management, and report it to the community and tell these good news stories that in this quarter we delivered this. And we've had questions come. I can ask these questions every meeting if you want, or every quarter. I don't think that's an efficient way to go about it, but we've had other council members ask how far along are we in delivering our capital works program, or are we on track? And I think if we focused on this every quarter, and that's all I'm asking, this would go a long way to being able to communicate with the community what we're doing, and that's what this is all about, communicating to the community. Thank you.
Secondly, Councillor Oliver.
Can I request a subtle change, please?
Yep.
Under point 1, I'd like to remove what's in the brackets based on financial expenditure. I think it should be the actual percentage complete of the project, not the percentage of the money spent.
Mr. Mover, are you happy with that?
I'd be happy if it said both, actually. I think that's a big welcome enhancement. Thank you.
So,
I wanted to add based on work complete, that Councillor Miller wants to maintain the financial expenditure. So you have both. So based on both work completed and financial expenditure. Please.
Councillor Scott.
How complicated is this going to be for the staff to provide this? And how labour intensive?
Through the chair, I'll go to the General Manager Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, that information's in the report, but to reiterate that, what I have said is that will take a couple of days to compile. We have an automated process at the moment which produces the spreadsheet. There is a manual element to that which allows the project managers to update the status of the projects and provide some commentary around that. Otherwise, all the other information is drawn through our system without us having to do any other work on it. This will be a manual transfer of information from that system into report. And of course, I've had the benefit of seeing also seeing the draft report, and yeah, that fits with what I have provided there in terms of feedback on the time needed to do that work. However, I'll say that it's quarterly, not monthly.
Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. This has my support. You know, it's really important that our community is give information that's very easy to digest, and this is a really tangible report that would show where their rate dollars are being spent, you know, and the work that council has done. So I think giving that to the community in a form that is really easy to digest, as well as we elected members, is a really positive thing, and I acknowledge that it will be more work, but I think that is part of the work of council. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Miller, do you want to provide a reply?
Thank you, Worship. Just briefly to close. I take on board, of course, the time that it will take. This is 2 days, once a quarter, come from a division of council that has the ultimate influence on our financial sustainability. What we do as a council is we manage billions of dollars worth of assets on behalf of the community, whether we're maintaining them or we're renewing them or we are upgrading to new assets and introducing new assets and service levels. If we can't provide the chamber with this kind of information every quarter on a fundamental core activity of local government, then we either need to invest more in our systems to automate it, or we need to look at the way that we are. And I'm certainly not questioning, I'm not in any position to be able to question administration, but I don't understand why we can't report on how we're managing our assets. That's all I'm asking once a quarter. I'm certainly not asking for this every month. And I really hope that we can tell these good news stories and communicate with our community how we're tracking, because that's probably the number one question I get asked. And I am very nervous about referring a community member to a spreadsheet that is pages and pages. And because of the size of it, the quality of it when it's published is so hard for the community to navigate. And so I just can put this to you and ask that the resources be directed to providing this information. It'll help us all. It'll have wonderful conversations around it, I've no doubt. Thank you.
That ends the discussion. I'll put the motion to you. All those in favour? Against? Against? It's carried. 7.4 is a motion from Councillor Oliver, which he's requested we hold over until the January meeting, until our new executive officer is settled in and on board as it relates to budget matters. 8 is administration report. 8.1 is the Horseshoe Bay Pontoon update. Councillor Livingston, you wish to?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Parks. I have sent through proposed amendments to this motion that I would like to move, and I just wanted to apologise to my colleagues for not allowing sufficient time for consideration ahead of the meeting. I'll just pause while it gets up there before I speak to it.
Councillor Livingston, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. I firstly just want to say I acknowledge Councillor Miller's questions that were put forward and circulated through to the members, and I'm more than happy to consider any amendments based on them. So to speak to it, it's important that there's a resolution for the community one way or another this evening. There has been a lot of community support and offers of assistance since our last meeting, and I think we ought to explore all the options. We don't have the benefit of time right now, as we are already within the surf life saving season. The amendments to the motion will give us more time. We'll commit to the minimum expense possible right now based on the information we have received to date from the mutual liability scheme, and we'll get the pontoon back in the water for the summer period. I know that community members have expressed their concern over the requirements for daily inspections and the expenses that we've attributed to the cost of the pontoon. But in my opinion, based on what I've read so far, not complying with the requirements of the mutual liability scheme does create a too big a risk for council and elected members from a liability perspective. I just want to reiterate, it is not my intention that the pontoon only remains in the water for the surf life saving period. It is my intention that it remains in the water all year round. However, at this point in time, I don't think that our council can commit to the 70-odd thousand to make sure that we can comply with the inspection requirements now. By putting these amendments forward, we have the time for it to go back in the water. We can explore partnerships with community business holders, anything that is possible. We can assess that at a workshop in February and then bring it back in March before the end of the surf life saving season, so we can then make a decision on the long-term management of the pontoon, which is on a balance good for council, good for the community, and having the benefit of more time and advocacy in relation to those requirements. Thank you.
So do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Thornton, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, but can I propose some changes? I'm always looking for savings. I'm wondering if maybe we do the normal summer season, not the surf life saving summer season, so till the end of February, and that might bring that costing down even more and make it more viable for council.
Through the mayor, obviously it would be, if you want to move a variation, you can do that, and that would be up to the mover to accept that. What I would say is, as we are now December, and what the intent of this motion is committing it until April, which would allow us to do hopefully a workshop in February and then bring a report back to you. So if you want the pontoon to go back in the water as soon as we can, and then only committing till February, it's going to be really hard to turn all the information around to have a report come to you before the end of that decision of funding has come to an end. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Ben, were you happy seconding it? No, you're not, so I'll change that. I was looking for a seconder first. I'll request seconder, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mayor. What we know is that our community want this pontoon back in the water. It's a really important asset, and it's important all year round, but especially in summer. It's important for our communities, and it's important for the people who come down to Port Elliot and Horseshoe Bay and appreciate the pontoon being there and appreciate that experience. We know that people who come to visit need to have that really positive experience, to talk about their experience when they go back home and down. We also, that our community are looking for this council to manage our finances, manage our budget in a way that we are not putting upward pressure on rates. So I believe I'm moving this because I think it strikes a good balance. We're committing some funds, which we will have to look at how we how we accommodate that in our budget for this year. At the next quarterly budget review, that will be necessary. But we're having a workshop to keep looking at the options. I know there have been some really important discussions in our community and community groups about, what can be done, how can we get this pontoon in the water. If it's not council, can it be community? Those are really important discussions, and I think a workshop is a really good place to have those. So I'm moving this, and I hope that the Chamber will support it, because it's a good balance. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Before I speak, Your Worship, I have 4 questions, if you wouldn't mind. Why do we need to have 1E in what was proposed? Well, my question is, why do we have to decide this now? The urgency around this is making me very uncomfortable. Why isn't this being recommended to be in the budget deliberations? Why isn't this part of a budget review?
Is it through the Mayor? Is it okay if we deal with them one at a time? So what was your first question?
What is the urgency for this decision?
I would say the urgency is that the last council meeting resolved to get it back in the water. I believe the intent was to do that before the Christmas holiday period. So we're bringing the report back so that we can achieve that motion of council. So I assume the intent is to get it back in the water before Christmas and the busy holiday period, because people want to use it. Yep.
I won't bother with the rest of my questions, but I sent an email as a courtesy on Saturday, and I guess I'm just trying to work out how we. In fact, I'll leave it. I'll wait and. In fact, no, I will speak now. I would like to propose an amendment, please, and it's the wording that I sent through on Saturday that you provided advice.
So hang on, is it a variation or an amendment?
This is an amendment, Your Worship. Thank you.
I'm just clarifying it. So you're moving an amendment?
I am moving an amendment. Administration has my words, and I'm happy to use the words that were provided in advice to me by administration this afternoon. Thank you. There is more wording than that, though.
Just let Tanya know when you would like her to scroll.
And then I'm happy to speak to my amendment.
Could I just raise a point of order?
What's the point of order?
Well, the point of order is that when I read this, it looks like a partly direct negative of the original motion, so maybe it should be a foreshadowed motion rather than an amendment.
So through the Mayor needs to determine whether it is substantially changing the intent of the motion and changing the course, or whether it should be a foreshadowed motion.
May I speak to my
Well, not until we've decided what it is, but work out what it is first. I think it should be a foreshadowed motion, because it is really substantially different to the original motion. So I'm happy to take it as a foreshadowed motion and go through the process. Wish to speak to the original? No, not to the foreshadowed one, no. But do you wish, we're seeing what the foreshadowed motion is, so do you now wish to speak to the existing motion?
Yes, but I'm disappointed, Your Worship, that my amendment is not being considered. My amendment was what was printed in the agenda with the changing of a minor word and adding, it's not changing anything, it's noting and picking up in the motion, or my amendment, all the key elements that were highlighted in the report. Because, you know, we all want the pontoon to go back in the bay. Why? It's about risk management and who owns that risk, as far as I'm concerned. So we're not, if I may, I can't believe that you won't accept my amendment, and I know that it's your prerogative as the mayor, but I can move an amendment. I can move an amendment, and all I'm doing is changing one word in that original printed motion and asking to note what was printed in the council agenda item, so that it's very clear to everyone involved what's going on here.
So may I, through the mayor, you are right, you can move an amendment, and what you're saying is it's just slightly amending what was on the agenda. The motion that has been moved, which is currently moved and seconded, is different to what is on the agenda. So the motion that was on the agenda was to fund it, sorry, the motion that's currently before council is to fund it for part of the time, and then for it to be brought back to council for further consideration. So the mayor has determined that it will be a foreshadowed motion.
So procedurally, at what point does this become a motion without notice, substantially changing what was printed and what we were being asked to consider and what we had all the information to consider? I haven't even read this yet. I haven't read it.
This is a motion with additional information to the original. It's not. It's changes to the original recommendation. It wasn't a motion. It was a recommendation. So she's moved a motion based on the original recommendation that changes it. Now, I just want to clarify a couple of things for you so that we get an understanding. At the moment, there are multiple councils in South Australia with this same problem, and we've been hit with it right on the end of the holiday period. Robe decided a couple of weeks ago, that they would leave their pontoon out of the water until they finished negotiations with the schemes. Tumby Bay decided to purchase or take ownership of the pontoon from the community and put $5,000 towards looking after it. There are 34 councils on the South Australian coast, which is 50% of the councils. We have the South Australian Coastal Councils Alliance, in which every one of them is a member. Adam Gray, the executive officer, has been working flat out, working with several other councils in this position to get this sorted out. What this motion does, as it stands here now, it enables this thing to get into the water and people can use it over summer. It enables us to start working with the schemes and the other councils to come up with a satisfactory resolution which is not ridiculously over the top and doesn't significantly impact on our budget. Tumby Bay has a budget of just over $2 million, you know, and they're going ahead. All these councils are not big, wealthy councils. No coastal councils are wealthy. They've got big areas and limited populations. So this is a really hot potato. It's backed by the LGA to confront the schemes. The LGA own the schemes. We're a shareholder, but we need time, and Adam needs time with the other councils to really work on it and get this sorted out so that people can continue to enjoy this facility without it costing councils an arm and a leg. And that's the whole objective, is to get it. If Adam can negotiate something by the end of January, which means the amount of work we have to do to satisfy the scheme as far as making sure it's okay is significantly reduced, then it makes a big difference to $76,000 in our budget. So what we're doing is trying to get it in the water so people can use it while there's time for it to be looked at and assessed. And if there was $36,000 in there now, we may not need that money, because it may be sorted out well before then, hopefully, and we don't have a substantial cost impact to council. And there are people in the community who have offered, with appropriate qualifications, who have offered to put the pontoon back into place and check all the moorings, both underwater and on the surface, at no charge. And our local members offered $10,000 today towards getting this moving. So there's a lot of support in this, and I think I'm very happy with this motion because it just gets what we want. It gets the thing back in the water like we promised the community, and gives us time to work on getting the cost of having it there reduced. That's all. I just want to clarify that, but you can speak to it if you wish, yes.
I'm not ready to speak yet, Your Worship, but I do have another question. This isn't about, why can't we, is it an option, if we're trying to buy time, give it back to the Surf Life Saving Club and they look after it until we work out whether we can manage the risk? I mean, that's a simple, very elegant solution. They've been looking after it for all this time. Why can't we just give it back to them and they look after it until we work it out? And my other question is are we insured? If we put this back in the water tomorrow and an accident happens, are we insured? And then I will speak at some point on this. Thank you.
May I refer that to the General Manager of Infrastructure?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, taking the first question, it's entirely your prerogative as a council to determine how to move forward with this. There was, in the previous reporting on this, the option to provide it back to the community. That option still stands. Any option, in fact, still stands as far as your own decision-making or consideration is concerned. We are simply acting upon this resolution, which has brought us to bring this report to you today. So we are acting on your direction. I think that's important to understand, that we are not acting under our own volition. We're acting under your direction. So this is why this is here and in the form that it's with you. The second part of that's gone straight out of my head. What was that, please?
If we put this back in the water tomorrow, which is what I understand this is doing,
yep.
Are we insured?
So we have been told that we are insured, but there are requirements that we need to meet with the pontoon going back in.
Which are? Because I don't know what they are.
They're in the report. They're clearly set out in terms of the management of the pontoon, talking to the inspection regime that's required and the maintenance of the pontoon. It is within the report and is part of the costings that have been put forward.
So we're putting it back in the water tomorrow, but we don't, even if I read the report, which was what my amendment was trying to do, was that we are noting we're supposed to have volunteer policy, we're supposed to have volunteers inducted and trained. We need all these things. When will those things, if that's what we're doing here, to have insurance in place and to be insured, what do we have to do? Because we are exposing our council, and this is, I don't know whether this is a question or I'm speaking, because I'm trying to understand the decision I'm making here and the risk exposure to the entire community that is seeing a change to a service level on an asset we didn't own, or clearly we do now. I don't know why there's an option to do nothing or give it back and let us work through all these things before we make a decision. One summer without the pontoon to allow us time to manage the risk. I feel I'm being pressured here, and I really don't think I have all the information for this to even be put to the vote, to be honest. But I'm just feeling incredibly uncomfortable because I do not understand the decision I'm being asked to make.
Through the Mayor, to be frank, yes, we are having to move very, very quickly. under normal circumstances, we would have time to prepare to put any new service into place, and this is a new service. It's a new service. I've explained that within the report, that we didn't have this before and now we do have it. There are requirements that we've been asked to meet from our insurer, and you're right in saying that as part of those requirements, not only do we have to carry out the inspections, but we are to have policies and procedures in place to help us in terms of the direction of having such a thing and also the management of looking after such a thing. Those documents have been prepared and are in draft, but they're in draft internally. The policy will still need to come back to you as a council because it will be a public document. That won't be back to you until January at the earliest. So those things will not be in place. We would be running on a draft of all of those things, including a checklist which has still not been through the MLS, because of the speed at which we've had to do this work. So I would also say, if I may at this point, that there is always the option to not put the pontoon back in the water, and you have had previous advice from the scheme directly to you about the risks and liabilities associated with owning such an asset.
I'll just add one thing. In the research Adam's been doing, in the goodness knows how many years these pontoons have been around the coast, there's never been a claim against any of them for anything. So, and it was extremely unfortunate. I think I mentioned once before in a briefing, about this pontoon coming away from its mooring and getting washed ashore, which sparked all this. The problem is not the pontoon. The problem is the breakwater. The breakwater at Horseshoe Bay is degraded. We've been onto the government for years to get that breakwater rebuilt up like it should be. What is happening at the moment, and we've made it very clear in our study of the coast, because the breakwater is deteriorated, we're now getting a surf wave across there we never used to get, which hits the other side of the bay and is damaging the coastline and eroding the beach. So it's a really important thing. And when we have a decent storm, that's why the thing broke loose. Nothing was wrong with the mooring, it's just that it got hit with massive waves that it wasn't normally used to taking. So, but there hasn't been a claim on one, and that's part of what the councils and Adam are working on. Who wants to speak? Did you have spoken? No, yeah. You've spoken. A question, yeah.
So my understanding with this motion is that it does say as soon as possible. So will the required policies and procedures will it wait until those required policies and procedures are in draft form and that will be adequate for this to go in, or is it like does this as soon as possible mean that it will wait until after the January meeting when we've had a chance to endorse those policies and procedures? What is as soon as possible?
Through the Mayor, that's for you to determine. So we have interpreted as soon as possible from the previous resolution as to mean to go in as quickly as possible. In all reality, that's likely to be the start of next week if that is the direction of council. So that's what we have inferred from the previous resolution, because that was to get it back in the water as soon as practically possible. But the definition of that is entirely up to you to define.
Any further discussion? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, and thanks everyone. This is a great discussion. I think this is a great practical solution, and if you can get it in next week, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Crimmins.
Yeah, look, I'm not totally happy with this, but my understanding and reading the wording from the last meeting, it did say return the pontoon before the summer school holiday period. Public schools went on holidays last Friday. So if we're going to follow this to the letter of the law, the pontoon needs to be back in the water now. Not as soon as practicable, not next week, it needs to be back in there. And given that temperature today was what it was, I think a lot of people would have been using it as well. So it needs to go back, and that was the direction of council. So just some suggestions. Your report talks about council volunteers. I think we had a bit of a history of council volunteers when we were dealing with the Friends of the Oscar W, and it caused all sorts of issues. So I would suggest to you that do not follow the course of council volunteers. There are volunteers out there who are very much prepared to help, but they will volunteer for their own organisations, not as a council. In terms of the drone, I had a quick look today at Google. There are any number of drone operators on the Fleurieu Peninsula. Why do we need to train up our own staff to do it? Why not just have an agreement with a drone operator, some criteria about what they must do, and let them do it at a fee for service? Certainly that's going to take a lot out of that 36,000. Someone also suggested that pontoon could be replaced on a regular basis. They had a costing of something like $15,000 for it. That would probably mean if the pontoon was new, it would, and it was replaced every year, that it would probably have a better life in terms of needing inspections and annual maintenance and what have you. That might save some money as well. But look, to me the important thing is, and we stressed this at the last meeting, we need to get the pontoon back in the water, and it needs to go back in the water now. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Scott.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm amazed that something so simple can be taking so long, this last meeting and this meeting. I think it's a great idea having the pontoon in the water, and yes, it can go back, as far as I'm concerned, any time. But it's not a council issue. It intrigues me that we are being hammered by our ratepayers, and I think you said yourself, don't bring anything extra into the budget. I think you said on the 1st of July, 4th of July, whenever it was. And here we are. We had to bring the flooding of Middleton into the budget because we need to get an engineer's report. Suddenly we're going to put another 36,000 in for a pontoon. If you go on, if it's going to be there for 12 weeks, it's 3,000 a week for a pontoon. All of us around this table have probably swum at Horseshoe Bay well before a pontoon ever came into the bay. And thousands will swim there this summer, and if the pontoon's there, they won't go near the pontoon because it's out of their scope. We're not shutting off Horseshoe Bay. All we're doing is leaving a little thing bobbing around out in the sea, or thing about putting it out there, and we're talking of spending up to $36,000 in 3 months, and we're concerned about the budget, and it's not our core business, for goodness sake. Let's divest ourselves of the thing, hand it back to the community. If the community want it out there, they're free to put it out there. But I don't think the council should have the risk. I saw a figure, and I need clarification, I did mention to Councillor Livingston, of 300 million public liability, which I believe, I only go on what Councillor Livingston has said, is if we don't, I think if we don't have, we don't run it like we should. But I'd like to know what the public liability on that thing is, and what is the annual fee for the public liability on that pontoon as well. And I think these things, and I take part of what Councillor Miller has said, I think we need to know really what these things are really, this thing is really costing us, and take the heat out of the whole thing. Horseshoe Bay's been there since the beginning of time. People have been using it for the last many decades, and just this once, if it has to be out of the water till we can nail down exactly what we're up for, exactly what it's going to cost, exactly the risk, exactly everything, well, does it really matter? People can still enjoy Horseshoe Bay, change their way of swimming, go over to the jetty, back across the bay that way, and come back this way. Just think laterally, but don't spend $36,000 on a sideshow. I just can't believe the thinking and the thought process that's going into this. Yes, it's nice to have it in the bay. I fully support it going into the bay, but this worries me. And I would foreshadow a motion. If this motion fails, and Councillor Miller's foreshadow motion fails, I've got one as well. Thank you.
Councillor Miller used to speak to it.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Thank you so much, Councillor Scott, for summing that up really well. There is no doubt all of us, including me, want the pontoon back in the bay, but I will not support it at any cost and without adequate insurance. And this is now not about ownership. It is about, and always has been, insurance and risk management. We need to have insurance and not need it, than need it and not have it. And there is way too much focus on expediency here for my liking. And here's where I understand where we're at. The Port Elliot Surf Lifesaving Club fundraised to buy a pontoon. The pontoon sat in their hallway for 8 years while they tried to work out how to safely get in the water and be insured. Port Elliot Surf Lifesaving Club members, under cover of darkness, anchored the pontoon in Horseshoe Bay without permission from anyone, be it their management, DIT, council, and without insurance cover. But I don't know that part of it. To solve the problem, the pontoon was gifted to council and permission sought from council to moor it in the bay. That's when council started acting like it was council's asset by giving permission that wasn't theirs to give. On the 20th of August 2024, the Port Elliot Surf Lifesaving Club wrote to council to say they can't conduct underwater observations or underwater repairs and maintenance on the pontoon due to cost and liability. The management of the Surf Lifesaving Club seek to pass the repairs, maintenance and liability to Alexandrina Council, as it is seen as a community asset, not part of lifesaving services. We didn't know that. The only way we knew it was that 3 weeks later, before council got a chance to even know that it was back with us, the pontoon comes adrift and washes up on the beach. Council goes and gets the pontoon and it's awaiting repairs. Council considers this in confidence because of the legal advice of insurers. And here we are. The issue is of insurance liability. We still have not resolved it. That's what's going on. Thank you, Councillor Scott. Belinda Sullivan said when speaking on behalf of the Port Elliot Town and Foreshore Improvement Association, not in her capacity as a Port Elliot Lifesaving Club member, that the report put value on the volunteer hours put in by the Surf Lifesaving Club to do the underwater inspections. For council to now do this is going to cost us a lot of money. My saying that doesn't diminish what they're offering or what they've done. Yeah, because council has acted in a way that suggests we are the authority and it's our problem and the community is looking to us to solve it. Councillor Scott said it beautifully. Why is this our problem? Why are we in such a rush to solve it? We're a public entity being asked to lean way into a risk that we should really be leaning way out of until such time we understand the risk exposure and ultimately who is doing what to mitigate that risk. I don't understand why the pontoon needs to go back in the water in such a hurry, one summer without it, to understand fully who's doing what and what's responsible and who's going to pay for it and who's responsible. I don't think is unreasonable. And I know we haven't asked the rest of the community what they want to do with this. So what my questions remain: when is it going back in the water? Why is it going back in the water in such a hurry? In fact, that's the first question. And are we insured? Because if we are not, or if there is a risk that we can't get insurance, give it back to the Surf Lifesaving Club or the Port Elliot Town and Foreshore Improvement Association, let them look after it if it's that urgent and that important, and then we work out what we're supposed to do with it. It is a new service that we weren't responsible for before. So I'm sorry, I know that's going to upset people, and it's probably not what anybody wants to hear, but I've got a responsibility. I'm a ratepayer, and if I'm going to be hit with an insurance bill that's unmanageable and uninsured, that we can't recover, I think I'd like to know that, and I think the rest of the community would like to know that. So my questions remain: are we insured? And what does this motion mean insofar as putting it back in the water and it appears that all the conditions that the insurance company said we have to meet, we haven't met, and we're not going to meet. It's not about the money, it's about liability and insurance cover.
Any further? Councillor Gardner.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I missed out on all the fun. I will be voting against this motion, any motion about spending any money on any pontoon.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Livingston, you'll close the debate. A question?
My question before the debate gets closed is that why would we even think about adding an FTE, half an FTE, to Councillor Nicholson's question that the community is asking us about FTEs with no rigour around this? I don't understand why we would do it.
Through the Mayor, so because it's a new service and the inspection regime that we've been asked to meet requires additional time, even though we've brought that time down through using technology such as drone, still requires individuals of our own staff to go out during the week because the Port Elliot Surf Lifesaving Club can't do it during the week. They can only help us out at weekends and public holidays, which we're very thankful for and understand why that is. So during the week, we still need to go there and make sure daily that it is in place and visually is okay. So in order to meet that requirement and to maintain our levels of service across the rest of everything we do from a field service perspective, which is the maintenance and management of assets across the board, we need additional support to allow that to happen. Under this scenario, this is a casual support, not a full-time equivalent support. But if it had gone in all year round, then it would have been a half FTE to support backfilling both the people going down to do the inspections and the management of the volunteer group that would be undertaking the inspections over the weekends and the public holiday. I hope that answers the question.
So is there any further discussion, Councillor Livingston? You don't want to speak and close?
I've got questions.
Question first, then I want to speak. Then
I've got multiple questions, thank you. My first question is in relation to the figure of the $300 million liability. My understanding is that that does not apply if we comply with the insurance requirements. Can you please confirm that?
Through the Mayor, that figure has come from the Department for Infrastructure and Transport. It's to do with the licence that we will acquire to have the pontoon in the bay over state land. In that heads of agreement, which speaks to the licence that's being drawn up at the moment for us to consider, it talks to either being a member of the MLS or having private insurance of a value of 300 million for public liability.
Thank you. My understanding is that Port Elliot Surf Life Saving Club and, correct me if I'm wrong because we asked the question last meeting, Port Elliot Town Shore rejected the idea of giving the pontoon to their organisations to manage themselves. Is that correct?
Through the Mayor, if I remember the conversation that occurred during the deputation when the question was asked of the deputy, I understand that was a response that was given. In terms of the Town and Foreshore Association, I don't believe there was any response provided in terms of the Surf Life Saving Club.
Okay. Does this motion comply with the requirements of the scheme?
Through the Mayor, if we adhere to their requirements to do daily visual inspections, monthly detailed inspections, and as it says annual structural and underwater inspection, but that'll be when it's put in and decoupled and taken out again, then yes, we would be meeting their requirements aside from not having formally put a policy or procedure in place, which I said are in draft, so we do have those available, but in draft, and having not gone through a process yet of inducting or training volunteers to support us on weekends and public holidays.
That's it? So you have your right of reply. Just a couple of things before you do your right of reply. It's just that Councillor Scott gets it straight. I'm not advocating we spend $36,000, quite the opposite. I'm advocating that that could cost us that much. But what the Coastal Councils Alliance, where Adam is trying to do on behalf of the other councils, and they're all putting a lot of pressure on, I can tell you, is to work with the schemes to reduce the amount of work we have to do to meet their requirements for insurance. And we are insured. There's no, our insurance doesn't specify each item individually. We have a blanket insurance over everything council owns. So to make sure that if there were an issue with a claim, we need to just continue at the moment to do the inspections as requested by the schemes while we negotiate with the schemes on behalf, with all the other councils, to get these requirements are really absolutely over the top and unreasonable. So we need to do that. And the idea, and the whole idea from discussing with Adam, is that straight after Christmas, by the end of January, Adam would expect, and all the councils would expect, to have a position whereby we've got a way forward that these things can go in the water with minimal amount of cost to council, so that the community can enjoy them, and just get on with it, because that's the whole idea. So hopefully by the workshop that comes back, it'll all be sorted out, and we'll have got a direction from the schemes on what we do or have to do, and hopefully it's a reduced commitment that we have to perform. But we have to negotiate that with them, and so we have to allow some money in there in the meantime, just in case. But just because you've got a budget item in there doesn't mean to say you have to spend it all. No, I'm speaking, and now Councillor Livingston is going to sum up. Right of reply. Sorry, no, we finished the discussion. I had my right to speak, and then Councillor Livingston will now do a right of reply. That's it. The assets are listed, but it's a blanket insurance. They're not insured. We don't pay $10 a year for that one and $50 a year for that one. It's a blanket insurance, but everything is listed. It's part of our assets. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Parkes. I too agree. It is not my intent that this council spends $36,000 on the pontoon. We need to allow for the maximum possible cost to comply with insurance requirements for the period of time within this motion. We don't have the time to look into other alternatives before the summer period. We can do that. We don't need to spend $36,000. The requirements might change. The remainder of the funding from the $36,000 will go back into our budget. The intent of the motion is to put a solution forward for our community, and I'm a little bit shocked with some of the discussion going on, and in my opinion, we make decisions about spending much more significant amounts of money than $36,000, and a lot of it the community do not like. The community really want the pontoon back in the water, and I really hope that this chamber does see merit in this motion. Thank you.
So that ends the discussion. So I'll put the item to you. All those in favour? Against? So it is lost.
A division, please.
Councillor Coomans is calling a division. Would those voting in the affirmative please stand? Let's remind you it's a new vote. So we have Councillor Oliver, Councillor Coomans, Councillor Livingston and Councillor Nicholson. Thank you. Would those voting in the negative please stand? Councillor Thornton, Councillor Scott, Councillor Miller and Councillor Maidment is lost. Thank you. And Councillor Gardner, sorry, is lost. So we have, just to prolong this more, we have Councillor Miller's foreshadowed motion. Do you wish to put your foreshadowed motion up and speak to it? Councillor Miller.
No, thank you. No, I don't.
So, that being it, that is lost. We'll move on to. Well, it's not happening. So we'll move on to 8.2.
Can I ask a question, Mayor Parks?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we need to make a decision of some sort. So can someone else move that foreshadowed motion?
No, there's no foreshadowed motion. It's not there. So you can't create it.
So had Councillor Oliver who had a foreshadowed motion? Sorry, Councillor Scott.
Scott's foreshadowed he might have a motion. Do you have one? Or can we have it? It's 8 o'clock at night. We've got a long way to go.
I appreciate that, but I'm also waiting for an indication from you to put it forward. And that indication was not forthcoming until just then. I move that the council support the reintroduction of the pontoon to the bay. One thing. Secondly, that it is gifted back to the community to be installed by others by people other than our council. If and when appropriate.
So that's your motion? Yep. So is there a seconder? Councillor Scott Miller, you're seconding it? Sorry, you got microphone on, please.
Yes, I think I will second this, because if they want it, if it's to be done this in such a hurry, someone else can sort that mess out while we sort it out what we will accept and what we don't. So yes, of course I support it going back in, but not with us managing it and not in a hurry. And I'm being responsible to the rest of my community, not just those who want it in, but those who would be expecting me to understand the decision I'm making. And at this point in time, I do not understand when it would be going in if we looked after it. I do not believe we are insured. Regardless of the budget, whether we have a budget or not, it's the risk and the liability that I do not understand, and that's why I'm not supporting it. And if my community doesn't appreciate that, well, that's for the community, not for me. But I'm very grateful to Councillor Scott to putting this forward. I think it's the only thing we can do.
Councillor Kearns.
Look, it does raise some questions. If we're going to gift it, does that mean council's actually accepted ownership of the pontoon? Is that a definite?
Through the Mayor, we established that several months ago. So when this council had a workshop on that. It was on the premise that that was the case. The council took ownership of this pontoon in 2013, when the council at that time decided that they would take that pontoon but then hand the responsibility for its management to the Surf Life Saving Club.
I think it was important to just acknowledge that as part of this, that the council actually owns it. What was the other question I had? Do we have any agreement from any group prepared to take ownership of it as their property? And I'll add one extra question. Has it got a value that provides some legal issues in terms of us gifting something like that to the community?
Through the Mayor, to answer the last question first, the value of that pontoon is likely to be immaterial from a financial perspective. It's also been in place for over 10 years, so the depreciation on that asset or the useful life of that asset has probably come down to a point where it's almost negligible. And in terms of the first question, so gifting it is an appropriate mechanism through our disposal of assets policy. The first question was around whether a group has come forward to ask for that to happen, or is no. No group has asked to take on ownership or management of that pontoon.
Is there any further discussion?
When you say gift it to community, would it need to be to an incorporated body or a company, or could it be to individuals? Or what's the legal situation with that?
Through the Mayor, I understand that gifting to the community is within that policy. I don't think it goes so far as to stipulate the arrangements of any group or individual. But that information can be provided to council. I haven't studied that policy in a little while, so I can't be completely sure that's the case, but there is a provision there to gift to the community.
One more follow-up then. If there was a sponsor out there who's prepared to accept the pontoon and pay for any maintenance, inspection requirements, would that come under the gifting approval?
Through the Mayor, no, not at all. Gifting of an asset would dispose of that asset off of council's asset register. It will no longer belong to council, it will belong to someone else. Any potential sponsorship or payment for a service externally would need to go through our unsolicited proposals policy, because it's not a proposal we have gone out and sought. It's come to us without any sort of engagement. So we would need to step through that process, which does include you as a council as well.
Alan, but there's no reason why we couldn't gift it to a community group and they receive sponsorship, is there?
Through the Mayor, once it's gifted, it's disposed of. What that community group then does with it is entirely their choice.
I just have a few questions, really from a governance point of view in terms of the content of this motion, whether it is compliant with our disposals policy, if there's anything else that we need to add in to consider just off the cuff gifting a council asset to community, which is not defined. What is community defined as? What's the intent in this motion that community is defined as? Get the intent of the motion, but to be comfortable, I'm not comfortable with it right now, and I would need more clarification.
Through the chair, while I'm acting CEO, my intent I would not gift that asset without bringing a report back to council.
So this motion would not result in the pontoon being back in the water before January.
Sorry. Through the Mayor, it's claiming that we will support the reintroduction of the pontoon and that it's gifted to the community, but I would want to bring that back to council for a decision because it is a major council asset that's very important to our community. So that would need to be done while I'm acting through a council report to you. So that wouldn't happen before Christmas unless we called a special council meeting in this week and the next 2 days in the next week, because then it's Christmas.
What is required to be in that motion for it to happen before Christmas?
Apologies for that. We're just having a quick look through the disposal of asset policy. The policy does state a general manager can make that decision to dispose of an asset. It's quite high risk in my view.
Could we delegate the Mayor to make that decision?
I mean, I would say you could delegate the CEO to make that decision, but I think that's a lot of risk. This is considering a big proposal for our community, and so for us to make that decision on the fly, I'm not sure I would be comfortable with that, but it's entirely up to council to consider. What I can say is council has, if this motion is not supported, the current motion that council have already resolved is that we work towards gaining the approval from DIT and that we continue the discussions, and that following DIT approval we've sort of done that, and we seek a review of the LMS insurance requirements to manage that pontoon. We still have that resolution from you. So I think if this is lost, we would then have to bring you a report back in the new year. Does the General Manager of Infrastructure want to add anything?
Just through the Mayor, the previous resolution was modified, just a bit of context. If my understanding was correct from the last meeting, when that report was debated, the amended recommendation, which became the motion that became the resolution, was at the last minute modified to include the subject to aspects of insurance and licence. The insurance aspect of that carries with it the need to, at this stage, the need to comply with levels of inspection or management of that pontoon, which comes at a cost to council. So there is still that element sitting there to work through. Maybe I could, there was a suggestion that this is workshopped and that may be an alternative that comes back in the new year. I'm just offering that up as a choice.
A couple more questions, sorry. So I know that, because I'm now looking at what we agreed on last meeting. So if the pontoon was gifted to the community, and I would potentially suggest that we put some parameters around that. What about the debt approval? Because council's got debt approval. Would the community, whoever that may be, then have to get debt approval and for example, the $300 million liability?
Through the Mayor, that would be absolutely correct, because it would not be our asset anymore and we would not be able to gain that licence.
Councillor Oliver.
Could I please foreshadow a new motion in the event that this motion is lost, and that being that we return and reconsider Councillor Livingston's motion again, given the discussion that we've had? Thank you. What about a slightly amended version?
A new motion, you could. Councillor Miller?
Sorry, I've just forgotten the point that Councillor Coomans was making. We don't have debt approval though. We have an executed by administration heads of agreement to prepare a licence. We don't have to progress that any further. So it's not our. I think I'm just being clear here on the intent. We can gift it if we want to. It's completely our decision, can't we? And I certainly would not put that decision on administration. I don't think that's very fair, or the Mayor, or it's this chamber that should decide.
Is there any further discussion? So, Councillor Scott, what were you going to say?
I would like to foreshadow a new motion which has very similar wording to the motion that we considered.
We know it's coming, so we'll see how we go. Councillor Scott, you wish to provide a reply? Councillor Nicholson.
Apologies, Your Worship. I'd like to propose a variation that gifting the pontoon to the community is brought to a workshop in February. My intention was more, I suppose, that at the workshop we would be able to discuss a range of options, including gifting it to the community. So I suppose that gifting, that the option of, yeah.
Councillor Scott, as the mover, are you happy to accept that? And can you put your microphone on when you speak, please?
No, that's changing the whole thing significantly.
You're not supporting it, that's fine. Is there any further discussion? Do you write a reply?
My apologies in that I just concocted that very quickly as the night unfolded, and I kept it simple so that it was basically uncomplicated. It was very clear. I have nothing against, and I think it's great having the pontoon in the bay. But I don't believe it's council's role to do it. I'm concerned about the high risk. It's deemed to be high risk. I mean, the mayor has said that nothing's happened in 10 years. I was with an organisation that nothing happened in 50 years and suddenly we had an accidental death. So you never know what's around the corner. The mere fact that the figure of $300 million was mentioned as an underwritten figure concerned me. If we get a better deal, being part of this LG whatever it is, underwriting business, well then so be it. But obviously that's the figure that they're talking about, and that is substantial, and it will be extraordinary if we can just have an insurance cover and cover everything without any consideration of the risk. High risk events usually attract a premium, commensurate with the risk.
Excuse me.
And I'm just concerned about the future. Sorry.
May we just clarify that the 300,000 figure came from the DIT for the permit, not for the insurance, for our MLS insurance. So it's a requirement of DIT to have the 300 million insurance, to have the permit in the bay.
Right, okay. Well, it's still just as, I guess, it's still a big imposition. But, and I'm also concerned a little bit that everybody wants it in the bay and no one can get it into the bay except hopefully through council at council's considerable expense. And we've got these listing of things that are that are requirements to comply. And it's all very well at the moment, people saying, oh, I'll help you. Fine, but we've got to look at a long-term solution. Those are the things that are concerning me, and I'm saying, why council? It's been in the bay for years before council became involved. Why can't it be the same in the future?
Sometimes I wish people would listen when I say things. I didn't say 10 years. I said in the history of these pontoons, there has never been a claim. Never mentioned any years. And I also said quite clearly, there is a member of the public with all the expertise and qualifications who's prepared at no charge to put this pontoon back in the water and check the moorings in the process as a matter of service of the community. And that's what I said. So just clarifying that in your closing statement, that it wasn't correct.
Point of order, Your Worship. I was relating to the fact that I understand the pontoon has been in the water there for about 10 years.
No, I didn't mention 10 years. You did, not me. Putting words into my mouth. I mentioned in the history of the pontoons, full stop, on the South Australian coast. So that closes the discussion. So I'll put this new motion to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried.
We better have a division on that too, I think.
Councillor Coomans is calling a division. I remind members of division is a new vote. Would those voting in the affirmative please stand? So Councillor Scott, Councillor Miller, Councillor Maidment, Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Gardner. Would those voting in the negative please stand? Councillor Oliver, Councillor Thornton, Councillor Coomans and Councillor Livingston. That is now at 8.2, which is the Goolwa Wharf Shed Draft commercial lease consultation process. Councillor Livingston, sorry.
I would like to seek leave to consider this, to reorder the agenda to consider this recommendation in confidence.
Chamber happy with that? Councillor Miller's running the meeting, so but can you tell us what the reason is?
Because there's content that I would, and questions that I would like to ask, which I can't ask if it's not confidence.
So is all those in favour of going into...
May I just clarify? So the confidential clause was in regard to items confidential nature because of the commercial and the individuals involved.
So now, are you all in favour of that? Anybody against it? No, so we'll hang on to that one. So remember where we go back to 8.2 to find it. So I'm just trying to work out when I've got to come back and don't miss it. Yeah, so 8.3 is the recommitment of the Brazilian Hills and Coast Regional Climate Action Plan and Regional Sector Agreement for 2025 to 2030. Councillor Miller has advised as of a conflict of interest in this matter.
Your Worship, I declare a conflict of interest due to my employment because the outcome may impact my employer, and I will leave the room. Thank you.
So there we go, it's 8.3, which is, as I said, regarding the Hills and Coast Climate Action Plan, Regional Sector Agreement 2025-2030. There's a recommendation there with 7 dot points. Moved, Councillor Oliver. The seconder, Councillor Gardner. Is there any discussion? Councillor Livingston.
I just have a question, and apologies in relation to the answer, if it is clear. Was SEEK engaged at all, consulted, should I say, in respect of this at all?
Through the Mayor, no, it was not consulted at the SEEK.
And follow up to that, what's the implications if it was held off for the SEEK to consider it?
Through the Mayor, it is a timing issue, so November and December is when this is all being considered, and we are the second to last council and in stakeholder to actually make a decision. So it's coming to us tonight, and then Yankalilla, I believe, tomorrow, or are they tomorrow night? So it is of a timing issue to get that all organised to reinstate the future agreement.
Okay, now if I can speak to it. I do agree that we need the Regional Climate Action Plan. It is very important for the Fleurieu. My only concern is that the members of SEEK are the experts at these sorts of matters, and in future I would ask that they are consulted with, because their comments, insights, feedback is invaluable for people to consider in the chat.
Is there any further discussion on this? Councillor Scott.
I was particularly interested to read this because it strikes right at the heart of what I have said on numerous occasions in this chamber, and it absolutely sums it up perfectly. The role of this group, the collaboration, it says collaborative cross-sector partnership, and it involves the South Australian Government. All these things where it is a group thing trying to combat the said climate problems. And all the way along, I've said we need to have regional, group and whatever. And it's cost us $20,000 a year. And when we look at it, they've got 1.2 million in external funding for 28 projects completed. They're doing all the work we wanted them to do. And we're getting very good value for money out of it, as I see it. And and building capability, avoiding duplication, so essential for efficiency. And so it goes on. And I think it is they have led, what is it, a successful statewide funding bid for carbon off outreach officers, 108 grant funding for regional climate action plan. They're really getting out and doing things, and that's how I think we should be combating the whole thing, and that's why I wanted originally for us, with our climate emergency thing, to be collaborating with Yankalilla and Victor Harbour. But it's been done by this, and it appears to be done by this very well, and I congratulate all involved.
Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Can we get Councillor Miller back, please? So 8.4 is the Chief Executive Officer's report, and there's a recommendation that that report for November 2024 be noted. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Gardner?
May I ask a question at the same time?
Yes, certainly.
Fortnightly catch with Friends of Oscar W. Wharf Shed. You had 2 meetings. Can you tell us how they went? What's happened? Please.
Through the Mayor, those meetings have been set up around the fit out of the Riverboat Centre, have been put in place around the project, from our perspective, the management of the funds that are being provided to them to undertake that work. So that's really where those discussions have been, and to really help them, support them in delivering that. They're doing an awful lot of work themselves, which is fantastic, and they've provided us with clear planning, clear programming, costings for all the work that they're doing, and we're running through those each meeting to see how things are going. And we've also talked through the agreements which are now signed and all those sorts of things. So in general, the meetings have been good. They have been respectful, and both parties well, council and Friends of SW have been doing their very best to keep things moving so they can get in there as soon as they possibly can.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Nicholson? Is there any discussion? I'll put the report to the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously.
Mayor Parks, we have been going for quite some time, and the policy does say after 2 hours we should have a break.
You're happy to have a break for 5 minutes? So we'll start again at 8:35 on the dot of 8:35. Right, we'll resume our meeting at 8:37. So item 9 is section 41, committees and advisory panel minutes and reports. 9.1 is section 41, lot 10, Langhorne Creek Road Project Steering Committee meeting minutes of the 26th of November. And there's a recommendation that we receive those minutes. Councillor Nicholson. Seconder. Councillor Miller. Yep. Any discussion? Councillor Coomans.
Look, this is related to the actual committee meeting and the procedures they went through, not so much to the actual item.
Yeah.
Because, so that's why I'm raising it now, not later. So I've got some questions. The meeting went for 36 minutes. Doesn't seem very long for such an important decision. And there was a representative from the Basketball Association, one from the Ag Society, one from Strikers, one from Cricket Club, and one from Camp Draft. But there were 3 there for the Model Aircraft Club Association. So did all of the 3 reps from the Model Aircraft Club actually participate, and did they actually vote on that motion? There's 2 motions. One was in relation to the previous minutes, and one of those three actually moved that, and seconded by Councillor Miller. And the next one was noting the Riley report and the option that disenfranchises the Strathalbyn Harness Racing Club was moved by another one of the members. So I'm wondering whether these are really valid minutes. And there was also one that, given that the Model Aircraft Association are very much affected by the decision to go with option 1A, and it was actually moved that it goes to 1A by one of them, that did someone advise them that maybe they had a conflict of interest? And I raise those questions because it seems to me that maybe the minutes are not really valid.
Through the Mayor, I'll refer to the Group Manager of Regional Development, who's the responsible officer for this committee.
I should also point out that the minutes, that the motion for the option 1A, it said it was carried, it didn't say unanimously, and our convention is that if it's supported by everyone, that we actually say it's unanimous.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, just in relation to the unanimous one, I was chairing that meeting, and the decisions that were made by the committee at that meeting were unanimous. I just didn't say unanimous. I guess that leads into some of the other motions that were put were also, well, the substantive motions were carried unanimously, and there were multiple people from the Model Aircraft Club in attendance. Of those that were entitled to a vote, everyone voted affirmative towards the resolution. And we go back and look at the original minutes for creating this committee as well. It relates to representatives from a range of stakeholder groups. It doesn't necessarily name them all individually. So it can be a little bit of a challenge keeping track of who's there. And we have on numerous times over the last couple of years had different representatives from each of those groups. If someone hasn't been available, they've sent a proxy. It's happened quite consistently, not just for that group, but across a number of groups. Whether the minutes are invalid or not, I'd have to take it on notice, work through the terms of reference, but from my understanding, the decisions that were made by the Lot 10 Steering Group Committee were unanimous on the night of the members that were there.
Well, the other one was the conflict of interest. And can I point you also to the terms of reference, and I have looked at them. It says representatives endorsed by the relevant committees, and it mentions all of those committees. And then it says names of the representative from each group to be submitted. So I take that to mean that each group has one representative on that committee with a voice, certainly with a voting voice. And we've had two different motions moved by two different members of that club. I think there's an issue.
Through the Mayor, in relation to the conflict of interest question, we did actually talk about that specifically on the night when we raised it, because it is a stakeholder group. So in theory, everyone has a conflict of interest. That's what it's a group for people that want to occupy the land, I think, by its nature. But in terms of any commercial benefit, there were none that were declared at the meeting. And in relation to that particular detail of the terms of reference, we've recently transitioned from being an advisory group to a Section 41 committee. And I think there's probably still some teething issues with the governance around that. So I would have to go back and take that on notice as to, I'll take you on your word for what you're saying in relation to the nominees and how that occurs. I can't answer that now.
Sorry, Mayor. The point I'm trying to make is that it lessens the value of these minutes. And I guess the other thing that's missing from the minutes is some context. So a lot of other committees actually put some context into what they're discussing, the sorts of points and things, and there was nothing in this one. Thank you.
Councillor Maidment.
I'll give you some clarity on conflict of interest as it relates to particularly council members, because it's probably come up that someone might want to say that I have a conflict of interest around all of this. So I've had a report from the Ombudsman, which, and if you read section 75(3)(a) part 3 of the Local Government Act, provides that a member of council will not be regarded as having a conflict of interest in a matter to be discussed at a meeting of the council by reason only of membership of a community group, sporting club or similar organisation. Now, this was given to me because I had a code of conduct in 2020. I don't know who sent it in, but I have my suspicions, and it came back squeaky clean. So I think those members sitting around that table, and I was there that night, there were 3 from the club, but only 1 voted. There were 2 from the Show Society, and only 1 voted. The other one was asleep. It was conducted in a reasonable manner.
And just raise a point of order, if I can, Mayor Parks, because Councillor Maidment said that only one member voted. There were 2 motions, and two different members of that club voted. So they were actively participating and voting separately, rather than one representative.
I think what we're doing is we're just receiving the minutes, noting the minutes. We're not making a decision about going anywhere with it. So I think it's something that could be put to the committee in future, but it's nothing more than that. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I was also present at that meeting, and we did definitely discuss who was there as a voting delegate and who wasn't. We also did raise afterwards that the minutes had incorrect attendees there. So I think this might be the version of the minutes that was originally published and not corrected afterwards. So it's neither here nor there to me, but of course it is important, but I think the minutes that are here were not the final minutes because Andrew Cecil wasn't in attendance, and that got corrected, and we talked about whose names were. So I think it might be a misunderstanding of who was who by way of explanation. But putting that aside, I'm delighted that Councillor Maidment and Councillor Thornton were in the gallery along with Mike Galea. He was the gentleman that made the deputation this evening. It's interesting that the discussions that the steering group have are open to the public, so anybody can come along. Yet the discussions that happen with the Harness Racing Club are behind closed doors, and we don't get to sit in on their discussions, but Mike's, of course, very welcome at those meetings, and I'm delighted that he was here tonight to make that deputation. I mentioned that only because everyone who was there that night would have heard the discussion, including the acceptance that there was absolutely no expectation that council was being asked or expected to pay for all of their needs. I'm not sure that's come through in the next item, but there was great discussion, and it was stressed by all members that whilst council support would be welcome and appreciated, the value in the document that they were discussing was its capacity, this is the document's capacity, to help those groups leverage and support individual clubs in their own endeavours to seek funding from state and federal bodies and their own peak bodies. They were all appreciative of the document and the information it provided, and I hope that when we get to the next item you will receive it, because there is absolutely no expectation from those groups about funding, and I think there's been some misinformation about that, but it's very clear there's no expectation from the groups about council building or indeed funding all of that. The power of that document is in what it will allow all those individual clubs to do. Strathalbyn is growing incrementally, and the needs analysis within the report speaks to that. We must also allow for growth and future demand, and at that meeting the primary priority was clear by the group that a basketball stadium and at least one oval, be it for soccer or cricket, was the priority. So that's a summary of the discussion that happened there, and indeed the group even flagged that they may not be needed anymore, and that's a future decision, because they were just a steering group advising, then because they were made to be a Section 41, and that's the first meeting they've had as a Section 41. They've actually been meeting regularly. They had a workshop with the consultants prior, so even though I take Councillor Cooman's point about the 36-minute meeting, a lot of work and pre-work and meetings have come to fruition as part of, before they became a Section 41 committee, that steering group has been very proactive. So yes, that's just my comments on the minutes.
All we're doing is noting some minutes. We're not debating whether we're going to spend money.
No, I know, but
it's just a moment. We're noting some minutes. Now we've got a mover, Councillor Nicholson, and Councillor Miller. You seconded, and I've just been advised the minutes are actually incorrect, and the correct minutes should be brought back to our January council meeting. Right? Mover and seconder, happy with? So there we go.
Would this is a bit of an unusual situation, and apologies for that. I wonder, given I know this has already been moved and seconded, but I was unaware that the attendees were incorrect in the minutes. Can I be so bold as to ask whether we could note the minutes and that the version with correct attendees will be presented to the next meeting? I'm just concerned if they're not the exact correct minutes. I don't want to table them on we.
May I offer a suggestion as the seconder that we note they are correct and amend the minutes to reflect that who was present, we can do that, and who were the mover and the seconders, because we know that information was provided not long after the minutes were published. So we can accept them, noting the corrections. I mean, I'm just understanding if we don't accept these minutes, what it means for the next item.
So the mover and the seconder are happy with that amendment to it? Yes? So that's okay. So is there any further discussion on noting the minutes? No? So, okay, I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. We go to 9.2, which is the report from the Section 41, Block 10, Langhorne Creek Road Project Steering Committee. The revised master plans and business case. There are two recommendations, one of the committee and one of the administration. I think with this one we'll do them individually. You can do them all in one if you want to. Are you happy to do them individually? Yeah. So is there a mover for the first part, the recommendation of the committee? So you wish to move that? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gardner? Any discussion? Councillor Scott?
I'd like to move a formal motion that this matter be deferred and to a workshop for further discussion, correct any inaccuracies, and be brought back to a future meeting. To a future meeting, or do I have to put a date?
This covers the whole item, doesn't it?
So can you please specify when you would like that adjourned to? You need to specify
I do.
a meeting, yeah. To the January meeting?
I was going to say the
February meeting?
There's big gaps in January, so.
Yeah.
But it was to a workshop and then be brought back to a meeting, a return
the February meeting following a workshop. Question. Second.
There's no question. Formal motion to move it, seconded.
Yeah.
So, is there a seconder for the formal motion? Councillor Oliver.
Just a clarification, please.
Beg your pardon?
A clarification.
A question, yeah.
Are we adjourning the consideration of the committee's recommendation, like so only 1 and 2, or are we dealing with the next one?
We'll be adjourning the whole report because we can't do the next one without the first one.
Is that what you want, Michael? Yeah.
My intention was for the whole matter to be considered later and brought back to a future meeting. Thank you.
So, moved Councillor Scott, seconded Councillor Oliver. There's a formal motion that it be adjourned. I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously.
May I ask a question, please?
Yep.
What's the status? When are we expecting the Harness Racing Club to provide their letter of their submission? I mean, are they going to have that by February, by the workshop? Was implied in the report that we would have that information for a January report. What's the status of the Harness Racing Club? Thank you.
Go to Matt, thank you.
Through the Mayor, we already have a letter from the Harness Racing Club. We were withholding that based on getting some indication tonight on whether the business case was going to be accepted or not, with the view of bringing a report back to the January meeting, because it still would need to go through the unsolicited proposal policy. So we need to set out what that process looks like for the Harness Racing Club. That may now need to be deferred beyond February to enable this to be completed.
So 9.3 is the Section 41 Audit and Risk Committee special minutes of the 29th of November 2024. There's a recommendation that we note those minutes. Moved Councillor Maidment. Seconded Councillor Gardner. Is any discussion relating to those minutes? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.4 is the report from the Section 41 Audit Risk Committee Audit Completion Report 2023-24. The recommendation that we noted, and there's 1, 2, 3 recommendations. It's all in one. So is there a mover for that? Councillor Oliver. Seconder, Councillor Maidment. Any discussion or questions relating to that? Not. Councillor Miller. We're up to item 9.4. No, the whole lot, all in one.
Sorry, we're dealing with the Audit and Risk Committee audit report from Galpins?
Yeah, the 9.4, all the confidential bits, we're dealing with the whole report.
Through the Mayor, he's seeking he's got a mover and a seconder for item 9.4, and they have moved the committee recommendation as well as administration recommendation.
And the confidentiality, yeah.
The confidentiality clause, just to clarify for members, is when the committee went in to have their annual discussion with the auditor, nothing was actually resolved when they were in confidence, but it's just there to show you that they did that annual meeting. So then the administration recommendation is to receive the audit completion report as contained in attachment 1 from Galpins, as you can see on the screen now.
So, Councillor Miller.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for that clarification. I do wish to speak to the audit completion report. I hope that, I trust that everybody has read it, because it makes some very important observations around the asset management exercise, and they are crucially important. And I just wonder what the management response to the auditor's report is there going to be some future response to that, or the agenda item was the response? Thank you.
Through the Mayor, I'll go to our Chief Financial Officer on that one, Andrew Addison.
Through the Mayor, I guess the way Galpins write their audit completion report is a little bit different to some of the other audit firms, where actually they record a response from management with respect to that. We've had a good chat with Galpins through the process around what we are trying to achieve with our asset processes. And we've also had a chat with Galpins through some of the difficulties that we're having from a financial standpoint on our asset processes. And I think can't quite remember which report it is. There's a bit of a conversation in one of the audit reports around the processes we are discussing with the Audit and Risk Committee around our renewal ratios and trying to better articulate the way those renewal ratios work. Sort of all that ties in together, but there is no sort of tabled formal response back to the auditors.
Any further discussion or questions? If not, I'll put the recommendations to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. .5 is the report from Section 41 Audit and Risk Committee, the draft financial statements of 2023-24. There's a recommendation from the committee and one from the administration. I'm happy to do them individually, separately, if you like, or all at once. Is there a mover for which way you want to go? Councillor Oliver, do you want to move all at once? Councillor. There is a seconder, Coomans. Any discussion? No, so I'll put the recommendations. Councillor Coomans. Yeah, that's what we've moved on. So if there's no discussion, I'll put, well, hang on. No, I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. .6 is the report from the Section 41 Audit Risk Committee financial results for 2023-24. Again, there is a recommendation of the committee and one for administration. Is there a mover for, and how do you want to do it? Councillor Oliver, you wish to move all of it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Miller? Is there any discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I was present at the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, and it was really excellent discussion that occurred amongst the committee members. I was in the gallery, I wasn't a participant. And I just think we all, this is not the outcome that we'd hoped for, but it is very, it's explained very well, and I think we have to understand this is what happens in local government, but these ratios are how our performance is judged. And I'm delighted that the person who's now going to be the acting chair of the Audit and Risk Committee moved some very key additions to the officer recommendation. And what you'll see at point 6 and 7 were added by the independent member of the Audit and Risk Committee. And it's probably one of the things that is so important that we consider around our capital project resourcing. And if we have, and I can't help but go back to the pontoon discussion. If we've got 36,000, a lazy 36,000 lying around, or even 72,000, this is where we need to resource and focus our attention, is on our management of assets and supporting our administration in that regard and the systems and processes that ultimately manage this system. So I'm delighted by this recommendation from the Audit and Risk Committee, and I look forward to this being enacted, and it'll be really, I think, a really informative and revealing exercise, not just for us as decision makers, but for our community as well, to understand this. So I commend this recommendation and hope that you'll support it.
Any further discussion? I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.7 is the Section 41 Ratalang, Basham's Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee minutes of the 14th of November. Recommendations there that we note those minutes. Moved Councillor Nicholson. Seconded Councillor Maidment. Any discussion or questions relating to those? Not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.8 is a report from the Section 41 Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee. Appointment of a chairperson. It's a recommendation of the committee and administration. We'll put it together. Councillor Miller used to move that.
I don't wish to put them together, Your Worship. I would like to move the recommendations of the committee first, and because I would actually like to change the recommendation from administration. So I'm happy to move. Are we just noting what the committee recommended first, or if we're doing them all together, I'm going to change something?
No. You just told me you wanted to move the recommendation of the committee. That's what we're doing.
From the committee, not.
Yeah, we don't need to go. We don't need to say it any more times. We've said that, and I said it. That's what you said. You're going to do the committee, not the administration. So we do that. You're down as the mover of that. You wish to speak to it? Is there a seconder, Councillor Nicholson? Is any discussion relating to the recommendation of the committee? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. There we go. The recommendations of administration. Councillor Miller, you wish to move that?
I wish to move the recommendation as printed, but I would like to add appoint that council pursuant to section 5.2. This is a change to at the start of point 1. Pursuant to section 5.2 of the terms of reference, appoint Mark Lowry as, and I'm happy with the word, interim chairperson. With the appointment of the chairperson to occur at a future council meeting. So I just want to make sure we are inviting those independent members in the next one to indicate if they would like to be the chairperson as well. Is that what the second one means? I'm happy with that wording. No, I'm happy with that. So he has, the terms of reference say that we have to appoint an independent chairperson through an expression of interest process, is what I'm just trying to clarify.
Point 2 says that. Yep. So you moved it. Do you wish to speak to it? Is there a seconder? Councillor Nichols, Councillor Livingston. Is there any discussion relating to that? Councillor Kermans.
And just a quick point, I think. I know Mr. Lowry on the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. Have I got that right? I think so, yeah. And he is a real professional. So I think we are lucky to have a person like that as chair.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Miller.
If I'm closing, I just want to stress that I'm certainly not questioning the credentials of Mark Lowry. I just want it to be very clear that the committee recommending that he be appointed as the chairperson, it needs to be a process that in terms of reference say. So I'm hoping that he does apply to be the independent chair.
Close the discussion, so I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 9.9 is report from the Section 41 Ratalang, Basham, Beach and Horseshoe Advisory Committee. Filling of committee vacancies is a recommendation of the committee, and there's a recommendation of administration, 1 and 2. So we'll do the first bit, we'll do the committee first, make it easy. So is there a mover for that? Councillor Livingston. Seconder, Councillor Nicholson. Is there any discussion relating to the recommendation of the committee? If not, I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. So we go to the recommendations 1 and 2, noting that 2 is subject to the endorsement of 1. So is there a mover for that? Move, Councillor Livingston. Seconded, Councillor Nicholson. Any discussion relating to the recommendation 1 and 2? Councillor Miller.
I'm not sure where to ask this, but I just wonder if we're changing the terms of reference, if we could put a clause in there that, is this just dealing with the Narrandjeri representative or the whole terms of reference? Because I'd like to see in the terms of reference that people, when they do their expression of interest, and I've probably missed it, that people indicate if they're a member of another community group. Would that be appropriate to do that here? Or was that in the, have we appointed the filling the committee vacancies?
Through the Mayor, we could probably do that in the next recommendation
The next
too,
one,
because
okay.
point 2 of the next one talks about the expression of interest
Yeah.
process.
Okay. Yeah.
Or were you specifically wanting to amend something in the terms of reference?
It doesn't necessarily have to be in the terms of reference, but I do think it's important that we know what other committees people are members of when they're submitting an expression of interest. So if that can be in the next one, yeah.
So we're doing recommendation 1 only, apparently. So is there any discussion on recommendation 1? Yeah, but 1 and 2 is recommendation 1. Yeah. So any discussion on that? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. We go to recommendation 2, which has got 2 points in it. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Nicholson. Seconded, Councillor Livingston. Any discussion? Councillor Miller.
My question is it do we know that the Narrandjeri community have endorsed Jade as a representative? I know that she's been on it there. I'm just mindful that we are appointing Jade as the Narrandjeri community representative, which I don't have an issue with. I just want to make sure we are respecting their community processes in doing this. I have no issue with any of it. I just want to understand that we're not offending anybody by doing this without consultation.
Through the Mayor, great question. We have discussed that internally, and I'll hand to Matt, who tends to do a lot of our liaising with the Indigenous bodies for us.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. The short answer is that there's not one group that oversees all matters Narrandjeri. So for things like native title and for official government referrals and the like, it's the Narrandjeri Aboriginal Corporation, whereas some time ago it was the Narrandjeri Regional Authority that would undertake those. So there's been a shift in that space, and there's a couple of other Narrandjeri groups that are emerging as well. So when we're talking about Narrandjeri community, it can mean a whole range of things, which is why we came up with that wording. We were due to meet with the Narrandjeri Aboriginal Corporation tomorrow, but that's now been pushed back to the 21st of January. But we're going to advise them rather than seek permission, because we have had similar things in the past where that more generic wording of Narrandjeri community rather than a specific group was deemed to be appropriate.
Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Miller.
So I hope that that's okay then with the Narrandjeri community, and I just want to go on the record as respecting that I don't quite understand the process sitting behind that. And I just would like to add a word, if it's okay, with Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Livingston, that we encourage community, that we somehow or other we ask either at this point or when we are assessing the expressions of interest, and I've got a question about that. I think we should get people to make known, if they're representing a community group, that they have a minute from their community group endorsing their representation of that community group. And I also think it's important that we understand how many other community groups they are a member of, because this is, I just think it's important that we know that. So I have no issue with this appointment and how it's worded. I'm just hoping that my question is, who's assessing the expressions of interest? What's the process once we've received them? Who assesses and makes a recommendation for appointment?
So a couple of things wrapped up in that. Are you seeking a variation to add another line to say that the expressions of interest process ask them what other community groups potential applicants are a member of?
I guess I'm happy to leave it as it is, but I wonder when we're assessing the expressions of interest, what the process is there and who is doing that, and who is doing the expression of interest assessment.
So through the Mayor, during our redoing of all our terms of reference, I think we've now got that information within the terms of reference. I'm not familiar with Ratalang's off the top of my head, but I'd have to go look, but I know we now have a process in there for that.
Councillor Scott.
I just want to very quickly point out that sometimes people may belong to other groups, but they're not representing those groups on perhaps another committee. So a person might belong to some other committee, but they're not there representing it. We work out where we want that official representation to come from, and the rest is open to the committee. And I think we need to be careful that we don't assume that people are representing a group when they come to us, come to the Ratalang.
Is there any further discussion? Recommendation 2 to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.10 is a report from the Section 41 Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee, a rescission of Resolution 8.5, and there's a recommendation there of the committee and administration. We'll do them together. Is there a mover for that? Move Councillor Livingston. Seconded Councillor Nicholson. Is any discussion relating to that? Councillor Miller.
I was quite looking forward to meeting with the committee on site at Ratalang and for a briefing and a discussion. So I'm voting against this only because I was actually really looking forward to having that discussion with the committee. Does that mean we won't ever get to do that now?
Through the chair, what they are actually doing is saying they rescinded their previous motions, but they still want to have a meeting on site. So the recommendation is actually saying that council do schedule the education session and the walkthrough still on site. So that's what they're asking.
Any further discussion? Not. I'll put the recommendations to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.11 is the Section 41 South Australian Wooden Boat Festival Committee minutes of the 25th of November 2024, and there's a recommendation there that we note those minutes. Move Councillor Livingston. Seconder, Councillor Nicholson or Councillor Gardner. Any questions or discussion relating to those minutes? If not, I will put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 9.12 is the section 41 Cemeteries Advisory Committee minutes of the 7th of November 2024. There's a recommendation that we note those minutes. Moved Councillor Livingston. Seconder Councillor Oliver. Any discussion relating to those minutes? Yes or no?
Yes, there are a couple of things that came up at the meeting, and one of them was the toilet to go in the council in the cemetery at Strathalbyn, and I thought that was going to be a recommendation, actually, that we suggested that the amount of money that was allocated for scoping a toilet actually be put into the construction of it. There was also some realignment of the plantings of some trees in the cemetery. I think, I'm not sure whether Councillor Maidment was there that day, but he may be able to throw some light on it. But there was some rather large, potentially large trees were planted adjacent to some graves, and it was recommended by the committee that they be relocated because of the damage that they're likely to do to the graves.
But is that in the minutes?
But they don't appear in the summary of the meeting, so
it needs to come.
I just wanted to draw your attention to that because they're not in the.
What we're doing is noting the minutes. Right. Nothing else. So is there any further discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Anybody against? That's carried unanimously. 10.2 is Council Member Activity Report. We've got a report from Councillor Gardner for November, and the recommendation that we receive. And in there and out and everywhere else. So 9.13 is the Southern Communities Transport Scheme Advisory Committee minutes of the 16th of October. The recommendation that we receive the minutes. Moved Councillor Gardner. Seconded Councillor Nicholson. Any questions or discussion related to those minutes? If not, I will put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Now we should go to 10.1. Where the hell's 10.1? I've lost. No, here it is. And there's the other one. So 10.1 is the council member report. 10.1 is presiding members' reports. So my report for November. Recommendation that we note that report. Moved Councillor Livingston. Seconder, Councillor Oliver. Any questions or discussion relating to those minutes? That minute? No. I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 10.2 is the Council Member Activity Report. We have a report from Councillor Gardner for November 2024. Recommendation that report be received. Do you have a mover for that? Moved Councillor Livingston. Seconded Councillor Maidment. Any questions or discussion relating to that? No. Are there any reports of members that are significant that need to come to the council? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Item 11 is confidential items. So.
South Coast Television, your community, your voice.